Hello, everybody. It's Susan here, and I want to talk to you finally. I've been putting it off for a while. Now we're going to look at Saturn combining with Neptune in Aries. So this is a very unique Saturn ingress. I'm looking at the ingress chart with you now. It's for the 25th of May, Universal Time, 4:36 in the morning-ish. And if you're in North or South America, that will be on the 24th. But for the rest of the world, it's the 25th of May. And it's something that will be quite transformational, more so than just the usual Saturn ingress into Aries, which is already a pretty big deal. But we can't isolate Saturn just coming into Aries because of the Neptune conjunction that's happening at the same time. And we want to think of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction as extending over the course of 2025 and pretty much through 2026 as well because of the retrogrades between the two of them. We're going to have Saturn in Aries from the 25th of May all the way through till the 1st of September, nicely rounding off just over 3 months of Saturn going through Aries and then backing into Pisces from the 1st of September until the 14th of February when it moves back into Aries to stay for about 2+ years, just 2 years and a couple of months, where finally it's going to be conjoining exactly with Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries on I think it's the 26th of February. Before it does that, it's still very much within an orb of conjunction. And then there's within 1 degree, which is essentially a partile conjunction. We have this conjunction in July between Saturn and Neptune. These are such slow-moving planets that these conjunctions actually are much broader than just the exactitude. So consider it to be in application already and for quite some time to come. So this is the theme that we're grappling with here in our new world, in our brave new world, almost quite literally. Read the book, and um, and I absolutely love this ingress chart. I'm going to tell you a few things about the ingress chart, and then we're going to have a look at why it's difficult to just talk about Saturn in Aries without mentioning Neptune. And so I'm going to actually combine the two of them because we really can't separate out Saturn from this conjunction. It's not going to behave in the same way. The other thing I want to say is that when Saturn ingressed Pisces, so it was already co-present with Neptune in Pisces. So in March of 2023, was it? I think it was even the 23rd of March, 2023. No, perhaps it was the 7th. That was Pluto I'm thinking about. So it was the 7th of March, 2023. Saturn moved into Pisces, but Neptune had already been there for quite some time. So already for about 12 years. Because the very first ingress of Neptune into Pisces was in early 2011, and then it went in 2012 to stay. So we're looking at a long journey of Neptune without the grounding of Saturn in Pisces. And then finally, Saturn comes along at the end of the transit of Neptune and says, my God, did you really let them believe that? Did you really let them get away with that? Did you really let them do all those things? And then Saturn comes in to try and sort things out. So we could actually say that pretty much since 2023, we've really seen very clearly what perhaps up until that time Neptune had really muddled or disguised or blurred in our collective unconscious or our collective awareness of life. And of course, individually, that will play out as well. But this is actually really good, having Saturn come in virtually at the same time as Neptune. So we're looking at less than 2 months of Neptune in Aries without Saturn. So we're getting off actually pretty lightly. And I think that's very helpful from the perspective of a longer term vision. And certainly Neptune in Aries is very visionary, but it can be extremely um, diluted if there isn't anything to ground it. It's fire and inspiration, and hey, let's try this and let's go there. And what if we just do this and let's see if we can get away with it? And then Saturn comes in and says, "Hey, rule, not so slow, not so fast. You can't do these things, or there are rules and there are, laws of gravity and laws of nature that we need to also accommodate." And this is very constructive. So for those of you who are afraid of Saturn transits, this would be a beautiful opportunity for you to see how constructive they can be. And basically, one thing that we can also look at is that the notion of being afraid of a Saturn transit often would require a certain amount of self-reflection about your relationship to authority in general, and particularly to your father, or the notion of father figures, and what that relationship was originally in your life. Because having these kinds of boundaries is a necessary step on the way to success. We can't get successful without some kind of self-limitation, and this is Saturn in Aries. It's recognizing where the goal is and putting the nose to the grindstone and getting there. But often people who have Saturn in Aries natally can have issues with the father, and this is interesting because that's the dynamic here between the Mars and Saturn, the challenge to authority, or the go go go, and I have to, I'm frustrated in my impulses and so on. And it's really worth reflecting on the fact that also the sun is exalted in Aries, and that is always going to be also part of the symbolism of this transit with both Neptune and Saturn going through Aries, that we want to think of both Mars as the ruler and the sun exaltation in Aries as a factor in this whole thing. And so the notion of the self, the Aries sense of, here I am, look at me, I'm showing up in life, aren't I marvelous? And that is where Saturn can limit us to master oneself, in the sense that it's not about squashing the ego, but it's about building up the sense of self. So often it can be initially, or in early life, or in the early transit of Saturn, a bit of a sort of feeling of frustration or limitation that doesn't allow us to do the thing. And we're going to go sign by sign to see what the thing is. But it's a really useful transit, and I really love this ingress chart. Think of the ingress chart as something like a natal chart for an event, and it's telling us about the flavor of the event as it goes through a longer period of time. Because this is the very first ingress of Saturn with Neptune in Aries, it is, for me, the most important one. There will be another ingress chart that comes through February of 2026, when on the 14th, 15th, when Saturn moves into Aries once again. But for me, this is the one that tells us essentially what's going on, and I want to break that down with you now. Then we'll go again into the sign by sign. We also want to keep in mind that as Saturn is now ruled by Mars, as opposed to Jupiter, where it was ruled by, in Pisces by Jupiter, and tracking the movements and influences of Jupiter over a couple of years, we're now having to follow the dynamics of Mars. And what's interesting here, as I mentioned, the sun is exalted in Aries. Mars itself is in the sign of the sun, and Mars rules Aries, of course. So there's a really nice complicity here that I find is very constructive. And the other aspect of that is that the sun itself has just completed a trine, but it is still very much in trine to Pluto. And that's a very auspicious dynamic, very much in favor of long-term growth and expansion. In this case, it's about social attitudes, because we're looking at an air sign. Pluto is in Aquarius, and the sun is in Gemini. Connections through innovation, ideas, connections of all kinds, relational connections. And this area of the chart is extremely important, because it's almost presaging what is going to happen when in July Uranus moves in to conjoin that sun. So before this is happening, we've got the sun almost like a placeholder for Uranus that's coming just 2 months down the line. And then we've got this wonderful inspiration, which is Uranus with Mercury, and that's super inspiring. It's extremely innovative, it's creative, it's insight into all kinds of aspects of what is important to us. Uranus is still tracking Algol at this point, so it's still a potential for social disruption, or in your private life, if you have things at this point, like for me, this is my North Node, where Mercury is. And so there's maybe something that's going to come as a surprise. What's going on? I don't know. Well, you tell me when we get there. Uranus is a very surprising and unpredictable kind of element. But we'll look at that sign by sign, because this will be a little bit more refined when we look at which house this is happening for you. And of course, if you have planets in these degrees that I'm referring to, like, for example, 4 degrees of the air signs, or the 4 degrees of the fixed or mutable signs, 3, 4 degrees. These are all affecting you personally at this time of the ingress, and most especially if you have the last degree of Pisces, the very first degree of Aries, these critical degrees, then you're also going to be deeply affected if you have cardinal sign points. So Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn at those very, very early degrees, or Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, the mutable signs at the very last degrees. So this is still in application in terms of an orb of influence to, say, 29 Pisces, for example, where Saturn is, where it's just moved off. In Indian astrology, they call this the Gandanta point. The Gandanta is this massive shift from water to fire that's not an easy or stable. Uh, Imagine, for example, boiling water. It's not an easy or stable transformation. Each transformation from one to another sign is always creating a moment of instability. So 0 degrees of anything is a moment of instability, but the 0 degrees point of Aries, from the last degree of the zodiac in Pisces to the very first degree of the zodiac in Aries, is also quite a point of instability. But think of that in the sense that instability provides an opportunity. Things are shifting. I have to work with that. The instability means I need to find the new way and manage this instability. And the cardinal energy is about starting something new. The initiating energy is extremely strong in this chart. So we also have Venus, which is forming or has just formed a couple of days before, perfected a trine to Mars. And this is another really beautiful story of support and harmony and creative impulse. So again, this is really favorable for this particular chart. Venus is, of course, ruling the planets in Taurus, so ruling the moon, which is exalted in Taurus, which is, although square to Pluto, it's separating from that square. So we've already done whatever the hard thing was. The moodiness or the fear has somehow shifted, and now we're into another thing. Of course, Venus is also ruling that Uranus and Mercury conjunction, and this is also very favorable, adding a dose of harmony as Venus herself is harmonizing with Mars. And then finally, we have this really quite wonderful square. Oh, not finally, there's one more thing. Almost finally. We have this wonderful square between Jupiter and the North Node, which again formed a couple of days before this ingress of Saturn into Aries. But that shows that we have this new sense of the wisdom and what we need to create going forward, how we need to understand these things, how we need to think about these big changes that are going on, that we're personally having to grapple with this notion of Aries and all the energy that's in Aries for so long now, coming over the last couple of years, but also going forward over many years. So there's something that's very inspired, there's something that's very creative, there's something that's extremely dynamic. And when we look at the separating sextile from Jupiter to Chiron, which is now conjoining Eris on the same day as the ingress, here we find something extremely healing as well. And this again is why I love this chart. It's extremely constructive if we go consciously forward into understanding how we heal what feels like injustice. Aries is about where we find a sense of something not fair. We're not acknowledged, or we're not seen, or the individual is not acknowledged or seen. And this we can extrapolate into society. And then, of course, you can see that in your own chart where Aries is. And this is Eris, the sister of Mars. And she is the goddess of discord. And so there's a lot of emphasis on shaking things up, where hypocrisy is recognized, where there's a feeling of this is not right. I want to show them who they really are. Let me reveal their true face. But that has to also apply both ways. We have to apply that to ourselves. And with Chiron mixed with this Eris, it also produces a quality of needing to heal one's own issues around self-identity or self-esteem, feeling flawed, feeling insufficient. Again, that will depend on your natal chart, but it has been the story of the last pretty much 7 years, pretty much exactly, in fact, 7 years, as Chiron moved in to Aries the first time in May 2018. Eris, for her part, has been the better part of a century in Aries. So this has been a part of this last century's story, recognizing the vulnerability of the self, of the identity, and what we feel frustrated by, where we feel unfairly treated, where we feel some injustice has happened, and where we want to point out where others are acting from a place of hypocrisy and dishonesty or discord. The discord is about it's a productive discord. So we want to think of it this way. It's not about just being a shit disturber. This is not where we want to take that. It's about recognizing that by being the mirror for what's going on, but also by recognizing that we have to look ourselves in the mirror, we are able to make something change, and that change can be extremely productive. I really, really want to emphasize how incredibly constructive this energy is in this particular ingress chart. I really do like it a lot. So the sun is ruled by Mercury, which is in the 12th house. That's the one, say, downside of this. Also, Jupiter itself, which is ruling the North Node, is considered to be in its detriment, because normally it's ruling Sagittarius, but we want to think of this as an opportunity for seeing a bigger picture, for widening our experience of understanding. And we can also use this constructively if we are careful not to dilute our efforts, not to jump in too quickly. This is part of the message also of Saturn in Aries, without consideration for others, without consideration for the consequences of the new thing that we're starting something new, but it's a considered new beginning. This is all very supported in 2025 and 6, and then going forward in time. I'm not going to cover world events here because that's quite a different kettle of fish. World events will not be necessarily as easy to grapple with because it's the individual life that is, of course, much easier to mold and to deal with. But definitely, we will also be partnering with what's going on in the world around us. We have to adjust our own circumstances to the circumstances of the global situation. Again, don't take too literally what prior Saturn and Aries energies have brought us. This is a new time. There's nothing that we can genuinely compare going back in time, because Saturn itself is changed by its conjunction with Neptune, and that conjunction has been building already for a couple of months, 3, 4 months. So it's not entirely new, it's just more intense now. And this is actually quite a helpful, more grounding effort. So part of the experience of Saturn and Neptune is to, what I really like is the expression, this ancient expression from the Latin. I think it exists in Greek as well, but it's a Latin expression, in vino veritas. This is what I think of when I think of Saturn and Neptune together. It's like, you had your couple of glasses of wine and the truth of who you are comes out. This is one way of looking at that, both socially as well as personally, where we can see that there's a side of us that is a bit nebulous or a little bit vulnerable, a bit out there. And Saturn comes in and says, what's the reality behind all of this? And this is your opportunity to really show up in a way that actually guides that more nebulous side of yourself, that the desire for a different vision. That's the Neptune in Aries, the desire for a different sense of purpose and mission. And Saturn is giving us some strength and durability from the start, as Saturn and Neptune combine right from the start. So we have basically from now until, what did I say? Yeah, till I didn't even say it yet. So the 13th of April, 2028 is when Saturn leaves Aries. So essentially, without the summer of 2025, we have or rather the middle months, let's say, for those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, without June, July, August of 2025, we have Saturn in Aries until the 13th of April, 2028, universal time. And so it's setting us up for something that is constructive for a long term, that gives us a more manageable way of dealing with this Neptune energy, and then we'll take off in a new direction. With the Neptune, we've established something based on our longer vision for life, our sense of our higher, maybe spiritual purpose or creative purpose. That's also very Neptunian, our vision in whatever way. And the Saturn there will help us not necessarily avoid, but minimize the pitfalls of the delusional qualities of Neptune, which were not the case so much with the Neptune in Pisces. Now, the one thing that can happen here, and that I do think we should be aware of, is that Saturn can be heavy. And again, it's about your relationship to what has authority over you and how you deal with authority in general, especially your inner authority. But also Neptune can be delusional, but also the disappointment. I'm let down by something. I feel let down by my own lack of, realistic thinking, perhaps, or realistic ideals or vision, but also perhaps a feeling of being let down by others. And this is again where Aries is about self-mastery, and especially Saturn in Aries. It's about coming to a place of being your own authority, being your own damn guru, as it is. As you can think of it as, I know what I need and what I want. And so I don't have to feel disappointed by those around me because I'm in charge of how I feel and I'm in charge of the life that I live. So Saturn is giving us a grounding and a kind of a proving ground, as it were, for the Neptune influence here. And that is going to be constructive if we allow that the individuation or that self awareness to guide us without feeling that we're somehow powerless or overly influenced by things around us. So yeah, it's a support. Think of it as a support for that vision or the new thing or the spiritual way of connecting to life at this time. And if we're creatively expanding or if we're spiritually expanding, we still need to, eat every day. We still have to go buy groceries, and we still have to pay the bills, whatever they are, and to connect to what is keeping us alive in this physical realm. And that's the role of Saturn. It's to give us that structure, this reliable framework that we can work with, and this kind of something that feels structurally solid or grounded in so-called reality, in the three-dimensional reality that keeps us alive. We can't deny that. And when Saturn is there with Neptune, it helps to keep things real. So this is a good time, I think, for really considering how do I want to live my life in as a fully inspired individual, taking responsibility also for my individual choices and actions. So much of this particular ingress chart is favoring that, favoring things, to come at us in a way that's extremely supportive and productive. Um, so think of it that way. One way of working with that Saturn in Aries dynamic, especially if there's a disillusionment around figures who are typical sort of father type figures or authority figures, elders, is to make peace with them, honor the elders, honor the people who have established what we've got, and don't only look at the things that are going wrong. Like don't only look at the how crappy things are, because there's a lot of really, really wonderful things that are going on, and noticing also where you're maybe sitting comfortably in your living room complaining about crappy things going on around, but not actually doing anything about it. With Saturn in Aries and the Neptune creativity that's also inspiring us with, this is your opportunity to walk your talk. And that's the Chiron Eris as well. It's like stop pointing the fingers of blame and sort out your own hypocrisy, sort out your own inadequacies, sort out your own fears and, insecurities that actually make it easier to criticize others and not do anything on your own. So this is really this is the opportunity, I feel, a really golden opportunity that has been backed by lots of emphasis on this Aries area of our life, really since the beginning of the year, already for a year and a half with the North Node having come through here since the middle of 2023, but also because we had this Venus moving through. So all of February, Venus was in Aries, and we had Mercury in Aries through Pisces, Pisces season, but it was March. And on the 1st of March, Venus retrograded. Then on the 15th of March, Mercury retrograded. Then the 29th of March, we had the eclipse here in Aries. And all of that newness, all of that reflection, all of that idea, setting up a vision for that Aries part of your chart is now where Saturn moves in and says, okay, let's make this real. Let's make this happen. Let's do this thing. So go back in time, go back over the last few months and see, was I listening to those cues? Was I taking advantage of those inspirations and these new ideas? And even to the point where, Mars is also still in Leo until the middle of June. So until the 17th of June, so about 3 weeks into this Saturn ingress, Mars ruling Saturn is ruling it from Leo, where it's clear, it has ideas, it has ambition, it has drive. Later on, then from the 17th of June onwards, Saturn goes into Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is going to be strong at that time because it will be in Gemini, but it's not necessarily going to be as confident. There'll be much more of a cerebral action. So again, we're looking at a Saturn here, which is going to be more changeable because it's under the influence of the quality of Mars. And then Mars will be under the influence of the quality of the signs that it's in at any given time, and the planetary rulers of those signs. So where we had a little bit more stability from Saturn being ruled by Jupiter, basically for the last almost 3 years, 2.5 years or so, less changeable, even if it's quite expanded and big thinking. We're now going to have a much more action-oriented Saturn. So you can think that things will be a little bit more dynamic, more ready to jump in, more ready to go, and then check what's going on with Mars to see, is that going to be backed up by inspired action or just acting, just jumping in. So that's something to monitor over the next 2.5 years. So we're looking at a very different sort of dynamic at this time. So the Chiron Aries, as well as the Saturn Neptune in Aries, the Venus trining Mars that is ruling her. This is all about looking at our personal goals and recognizing any kind of selfishness or impulsiveness that is going to be unhelpful to other people. It's going to be challenged by circumstances or reality or authority figures or other people, where it's kind of like, yeah, you know what, you can't get away with that. So you need to think big, think in terms of your role in the context of everybody else. This is certainly the Pluto dynamic for 2 more decades, pretty much, Pluto and Aquarius. Um, I did also a video a while back about this dynamic of the Pluto-Mars opposition. I called it "Who's Your Daddy?" And this is why, because this is part of this dynamic, is understanding literally like who has control over me. Saturn and Neptune are going to be sextiling Pluto. Neptune has been in a broad sextile off and on with Pluto for, again, almost a century. And Saturn will be calling in a new sextile with Pluto that will also include a sextile to Uranus as of July. And then the trine that comes from Pluto to Uranus, which brings all this wonderful new opportunity. But we cannot do things without considering the greater good, without considering the social dynamics of what we're doing. I think also we're looking at something that can cause people who are not clear of their capacity, their personal role, their personal confidence, or their abilities to show up for themselves. I think that can be a time where there can be a lot of depression, anxiety, a challenge to an individual who might not feel supported socially. And we have to look out for each other, because this is something that will be possible in this time that we don't want to obviously manifest, but it will manifest, and it's going to be there all around us. So we want to be living in clarity, not for ourselves only, but for everyone's benefit, that we're really working with something that feels inspired and clear, motivated from what I can do, how can I help? Like Mr. Rogers would say, look for the helpers, be the helper. Whenever there's a crisis, whenever something feels overwhelming, look for the helpers and be that person. Even if it's like literally our last act on earth, we've done something that was pro humanity, that was pro love, that supports, the divine aspect of humanity. So this is really where we're going. And then, of course, in just 3 weeks after, not even, less than 3 weeks after, Jupiter is actually going to be exalted in the second in the sign of Cancer. So just after Saturn is moving in here, Jupiter in the summertime, mid-June, 15th of June, Northern Hemisphere summer, is going to be squaring Saturn, squaring Uranus. And that's going to call in all of the wisdom that we've been reflecting on just now, recently in May, with Jupiter squaring the nodes. And all of what we've learned from the beginning of 2025 as Jupiter is ruling the North Node and calling in this wisdom to make it somehow feel more comfortable, feel more loving, more compassionate as Jupiter goes into its sign of exaltation, Cancer. Well, I'll do a separate video about that, but it's a big part of what's going on now. Uh, right. So, speaking of making things comfortable, I've got to stop my dog from barking at total strangers here. So I will come back in a second and we're going to do the sign by sign. Okay, sorted the dog. I just remembered that I also wanted to talk just really briefly about why Saturn is in detriment, or actually, technically it's in its fall in Aries, because it's exalted in Libra, and this is because the when we're in relationship of any kind, there is a certain amount of compromise and self-restraint, which is represented by Saturn, and a stability, a stabilization of the balance between two people or a group of people. As Libra is really about the individual relationships. And then, yeah, we get to the social, more general social relationships when we get to Aquarius. But still, the Saturn energy in Libra is about stabilizing that balance and being fair to each other, being in integrity within in relationship. And Aries doesn't share that idea. Aries is about the self. However, we've got that in our chart. It's about how I do things, how I want my things done, and how I show up in this lifetime. And so that can lead to a forgetting that other people are need to be taken into consideration. So when Saturn comes into Aries, it's part of that reminder that you can't get away with doing what you want. You can't just do what you like. You do have rules. You have to go to bed at this time. This is the Aries is kind of like the toddler of the zodiac, and it's like saying, there are ways of being a better person because we want to integrate ourselves into a collective. And so when Saturn comes into Aries, there is a potential quality of rejection of that, or rebelliousness, or resentment to restrictions. And it can make for a sense of just kind of lashing out or reaching into new things willy-nilly, where Saturn will always call you back and say, did you think this through? Did you consider what that might look like in a year, 5 years, 10 years? Have you made a plan? Have you considered how this affects other people? And so this is really where the Saturn becomes uncomfortable in Aries. And the other aspect is that Aries, if you think about it again as a toddler, how wonderful it is when a child is still too young to really have a sense of insecurity about themselves, and they're just shining like children do, and coming up with its little scribble and showing you its little scribble on the piece of paper and saying, I did this thing. And that's very much this Aries dynamic. And Saturn says, oh, you didn't color in the lines, or that doesn't look like anything. So the Saturn in Aries can be quite heavy, and especially if you have this natally, it can mean that there has been some breach of confidence with an elder, with a father figure, or with society. Just this feeling of there's something wrong with me. I have to do it differently, and whatever I chose to do is it's not good enough, or even I am not welcome. I am not good enough, and this is something to reflect on. If you have Saturn in Aries, I just like I did with Saturn in Pisces, I'm offering a discount for readings for the duration of Saturn going through Aries for the next couple of years. So look in the description box below, and you can have a discount on personal readings for anyone with Saturn in Aries. You don't have to be an Aries to have Saturn in Aries, because it was there for 1967 through 69, I think it was. I'll put the dates in the description box. And then again in the late 30s, early 40s, I think it was 30. My mom is Saturn in Pisces. She's just had her third Saturn return. So that was 1936. So that means 37 through 39. I think we had Saturn in Aries before. So if you're doing your third Saturn return, then this is also possible. So Saturn returns with Saturn in Aries are a real opportunity to make peace with yourself, make peace with father figures, making peace with your role and your sense of being enough, your sense of being okay, just as you are. So that self-mastery is all the more true for the Saturn in Aries types, and recognizing where it can be a really constructive thing to hold back a part of yourself so that you don't make everything about you and you recognize, well, actually, I'm clear why I'm holding a part of myself back. It's for the greater good and it's for my own good in terms of how I integrate my needs and my vision for life into the greater whole or into the relationship dynamic that I want. So that I just wanted to point out too with the Saturn in Aries, because it is in its full and generally considered not the favorite place of Saturn. Saturn is also answering to Mars there. Um, so there can be a little bit of like the younger male in opposition to the elder male, and there's this kind of dynamic of hierarchical pushback that can be symbolized by the Saturn in Aries as well, where Saturn in Libra, for example, where it's exalted, is ruled by Venus, which is a good friend of Saturn's. So all of that to say that we're all collectively going to be looking at our relationship to hierarchy. And that is not to say that we all need to now learn how to bow down to hierarchy. I'm talking about constructive, healing relationship to hierarchy in all ways, all shapes and forms, including our own inner authority. So let's have a look now at Saturn through the signs, and we will go forward. I want to put Aries on now. If I go backwards, we're going to lose Saturn, are we? We're going to lose Saturn? Yes, we will. What to do? Okay, so Aries, we're going to do it this way anyway. Bear with me here. We've got Saturn at the very last degree, a very last minute of the very last degree of Pisces, but we're going to say that Saturn is in the 0 degree Aries point in your sign, just to save me the time of going through the wheel. So apologies, Aries. Your moment is being spoiled somehow by Pisces, but here we go. So you, Aries, Sun, Moon, or Ascendant, will have Saturn moving through your first house with Neptune the entire time. And that's going to be an opportunity for you to reshape your identity. Now, the first house is about your body, how you show up in the world, your sense of, how you act in life, how you take action, how you get involved in life. Um, and Saturn here will show you perhaps at times limitations around your physical self or a need for taking more responsibility for your physical self or for mastery over the way that you participate in life. Maybe recognizing that there's been a little bit too much of wasted, dispersed energy where now you really are ready to take the wheel and start to drive things in the way that makes more sense to you. You also have had a lot of action in your chart, especially in 2023, 4, 5. It's been very, very impactful for Aries. There's a whole new sense of self if you are Aries, Sun, Moon, or Rising. And look in the description box to see why the Sun, Moon, and Rising are supposed to be considered. It's not just about the ascendant sign. This is a relatively new idea that only the ascendant should apply because the solar self, especially for an Aries, is extremely important. The notion of our conscious awareness of self is coming through the sun. Our career comes through the sun. Our relationship to the masculine solar identity, how I participate outwardly in this more penetrative way, how I engage in life, that's the sun. And then the moon is how do I feel about my life? What is the quality of my mind and the feeling of emotional connection that I have with life itself? And that also represents home and mothers and nurturing qualities in life. So you can't get much more personal than that. So do listen, sun, moon, and ascendant sign, not just the ascendant. So the derived houses will also be extremely relevant to you. So Aries, yeah, this is a huge time for you because you're setting out on a new journey of self. Now, if you are in your Saturn return as well, if you have Saturn in Aries, this will be even more so because you're leveling up a whole new cycle that's about a 29-year cycle that sort of completes over 29 to 30 years. And you will have had that cycle in the late 90s, so from 97 through 99, roughly. So I think it was until February 1999. And then again before 67 to 69 and so on. And so this is an opportunity for you to really level up and see, okay, what was relevant for me over the last 3 decades is maybe no longer relevant. Even if it's not your Saturn return, you're going to be really focusing on yourself. It's the necessary thing of the moment. You definitely had a lot of that with the North Node moving through Aries, again from mid 2023 until just early January of 2025. But this is different because Saturn asks us to really step up and take responsibility for things, take responsibility for our attitudes towards ourselves, towards the way that we engage in the world. It can make you appear to others as more serious, more grounded, more there's a deeper sense of gravitas when Saturn goes into one's first house. And it's very personal. So you might go from having a more carefree, more frivolous type of reputation or way of engaging in life to suddenly realizing, oof, yeah, I got to do something here. And there's something about the way that I'm engaging in my life that actually can make me feel insecure, or that can make me feel less than significant. And with Saturn going through your sign, it will be an opportunity for you to really say, yeah, you know what, I can do this thing. People can lean on me. I can be that source of inspiration. And this is very much the fire energy, being an inspiration. And with Saturn in Aries, it's about making that lasting. So it's, how can I maybe build this into my identity? Being a source of inspiration, especially as your ruler at the time of this ingress is in the fifth house of self-expression, quite happily so. And Mars loves to be in Leo. It does very well. It's very demonstrable. And it's also in a lovely trine to Venus, which is in your first house and ruling your second house of values and what's important to you. And Venus also rules your relationship sector. So you're thinking bigger. And Saturn makes you think like bon père de famille. You're now the sort of good father figure, the person who takes care of others, who is really looking after the greater good through your own capacities. So this is a very big opportunity to step up into yourself, quite literally to master yourself and to show the world that you have something significant to share and to accomplish. We will be talking a lot more about this, so there will be layers and layers to this as planets shift around the dial, and as there will be a certain transformation of flux as Saturn and Neptune do their little dance in your first house. But this is a moment in time where you can start to feel yourself right now, expand into a vision that you have for yourself and make it real and make it something that is constructive. So if you do feel that you're depressive or you're anxious and you're finding yourself ungrounded, come back to heal the solar masculine, come back to heal the notion of authority, what has authority over me. Checking your faith as well, especially as the North Node is moving through the 12th house. We've had Saturn moving through the 12th, and then both Saturn and Neptune will go back into the 12th house again from the 1st of September for Saturn, and from, I can't remember exactly, but in October for Neptune, and all the way through February 2026. So there's going to be a checking in with your spiritual self, with maybe issues of self-undoing, things that you have learned or need still to learn how to take care of to make your life more structured, more sound. This is a really key opportunity also to show up in terms of your career in an incredibly respectable and powerful way, because Saturn rules your 10th house of the career sector or your vocation, your sense of, your ambitions and your aims in life. And your ruler, Mars, is exalted in the 10th house as well. So it just brings that sense of I have a goal, I have a mission. That's why Aries is the way it is. And also it rules the 11th house of society, where you have Pluto. So there's something about what this moment is bringing where you also really want to change your relationship to the wider world, or to your social connections, your sort of network and the friends, acquaintances you spend time with, maybe also groups that you spend time with that share a particular ideology or vision for life, and you're going to maybe play a bigger role in that. Um, yeah, and also the just overall the notion of this new vision for yourself is shaping you over time. So it's not something you have to sort of step up and do right away. It's a moment to moment growth in your sense of self. You're taking on new responsibilities, taking on new capacities, and you're not in that space of having to be thrown in and figure it all out right now in 2025. You're going to be tested step by step, saying, okay, I can do this, but I probably could do more. Let's do more. And then you stretch into the more and you see, well, what's working, what's not working. So especially if you're not feeling good about yourself right now, or if you're particularly worried about the global circumstances right now, come closer to yourself and say, what can I do in this moment? What's the thing that I can actually do and contribute to in this moment that's going to bring me to a better place that helps me fit into a world that I like, that I appreciate, and that I'm no longer going to tolerate sitting around and complaining about the state of things without also recognizing that I'm contributing energetically at the very least, or even in the 3D context, I'm contributing to what I don't like around me. So that can be a real moment of personal wisdom and growth. Says, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to do more of that. So especially with Jupiter in your third house gives you an opportunity to really change your way of thinking and certainly change your way of engaging in the local space around you, changing the connections around you. That's it, Aries. I think there's a lot there, and certainly there'll be many, many more times that we look at this and how you can expand into yourself over the next sort of 2.5 years-ish. And definitely, this is an opportunity for you to think in a strategic way. Mars is very strategic, but more so in Scorpio. Mars in Aries just wants to get shit done. And the thing is that this is a time to also think strategically. So the Saturn impulse will also help you slow that down and think more long term. Think more like, okay, if I do this thing now, that will bring me growth 2 years from now, or that will bring me more based on my vision, based on the sense of why I feel I'm here, based on my creative impulse. Mars, again, in the fifth house, contributes really wildly to this beautiful creative impulse, especially trining back to Venus in your first. So that Neptune is not alone in terms of the creative impulse. It's really being supported right now. This is a wonderful kickoff for Saturn in your sign, Aries, sun, moon, and ascendant sign. So yeah, wishing you all the best. I'll be back to talk about more about that in the future. But I'd love to hear from you in the comments as well. If you have Saturn in Aries and how that manifests for you, it can help other people understand Saturn in Aries in general. So see you very soon in the next video. So Taurus, this is happening in your 12th house, which is one of those more hidden aspects of ourselves. It's the more mysterious or nebulous areas of life where we think of our spirit, what is our unconscious process, what's hidden from social view as well, not just hidden from ourselves, but hidden from society in general. And this is also what is hidden because it's gone. It's far away, living in another country, living in another time. It's ancestors, things that we don't really see, but it does have a powerful impact on us. It's a very strong influence. Think of it as the sort of OS, you're the device, and the OS is the 12th house. And when Saturn goes in there with Neptune, you really have a great opportunity to understand something about how you're built spiritually, how you're built from the unconscious mind. Your ruler, Venus, is in the 12th house at the same time. So emphasizing that connection to spirit, the connection to ancestors, the connection to what is unseen. Perhaps also you're sensing there's a need to withdraw. There's a need to pull yourself away from more active relating at this time. And that can be something that you do off and on, going through the next 2.5 years while Saturn is in the 12th with Neptune. It's a very enriching time to every now and then just switch off and withdraw. You have a trine also from your ruler Venus to Mars at this time, and Mars is ruling the Saturn, ruling your 12th house, ruling that Venus currently, even though she's your ruler. And he also rules the seventh house of relationships, but he's there in the fourth house of how you feel about things and what makes you feel secure. And this is an opportunity to also recognize that part of your security comes from your relationship to spirit, or your unique way of relating to what is hidden from our eyes, whether it be spirit guides or ancestors, or even just your own meditative practice, for example, your quality of just retreating, coming back away from activity. There can be a sense also of losing something, letting go of something, which for Taurus can be destabilizing, but also you do have a lot of activity in your first house at the moment. You've got Uranus combining with Mercury, shaking things up in terms of your way of showing up and the way that you are, the feelings that you have around yourself and your own self-worth, perhaps also your role in relationships in general. And the moon is in your first house, which is lovely because that's its exaltation sign. The moon loves to be in your sign, Taurus. So especially if you are a Taurus moon, this is even more wonderful, but Taurus sun, moon, and rising. Um, so you might find this to be a relatively emotional time, or a time where you feel perhaps your sense of security is challenged, and you're really asked here to draw on spirit, to draw on your faith. Saturn rules your ninth house of faith and what you believe in, and the things that you feel are important, that motivate you in life. And the way you feel why am I here? This kind of raison d'être. And then Saturn also rules the 10th house of your connection to your parents, or being a parent, or sources of responsibility and social connections that feel important, including the work that you do, the mission that you have in life, or your sense of your higher achievements, and maybe even the sense of legacy as well. So there is perhaps also in this moment in time quite a lot of thought about that, your role, your legacy, what is important to you. And that's whatever is going on here is supporting the way that you show up in life. So your spiritual practice, although it's a little bit invisible to other people, plays a really key role in what grounds you. And this is true always for Taurus, but it's especially true in this moment in time. So if you feel unsettled and worried about the more material side of life, or even in terms of relationship dynamics or professional dynamics, come closer to your spirit guides, come closer to what you have faith in. Find counsel, find people who can help you through that. Recognize where you might be creating anxiety, or doing something habit-driven, something that's not supportive of you. The 12th house is also the house of hidden enemies, which often is our own self, and a recognition that we can undo all of the good things that we want to do by lazy habits, or not doing things that are helpful. And so with Saturn there helping Neptune become more aware and spiritual, rather than allowing for the more lazy, potential, delusional, or sort of la-di-da way of being in the 12th house. This is quite good. And even if you have, for example, a gift in terms of spiritual insight, deep, profound insight, intuition, the fact that Saturn is there with Neptune can help you actually make use of that and make it more constructive. Have you realize, well, actually, it's not just my mind, it's not a dream, it's not just something that I'm thinking about. It's something that is real for me, and I can have faith in that. I can test it, prove it, and say, yeah, this is actually. I had that dream, I had that vision, and it's true, it's real, it's manifesting, and I can make it manifest. This can even contribute to your work out in the world, as a spiritual guide or teacher, or somebody who works in healing endeavors, because, Venus is here in the 12th with that Saturn, Neptune. Venus rules your 6th house of everyday work. And then, of course, as I said, Saturn rules your 9th and 10th houses, which contribute to that role as guide, teacher, counselor. And it shows up in your career and the way that you act in the world outside. So this is a really opportune time for you to think about your deeper connection what motivates me from a more spiritual side? What motivates me from this place of retreat? What motivates me from this place of quiet understanding of why I'm here, and also connecting with ancestors? And especially so if there's been some breach in terms of the role of father. The ninth house for me represents fathers. 10th house is parents and social influences, like the social pressures, let's say, social expectations, um, family in the broadest sense, the expectations of family. So that's very Saturnian. And so there may have been a breach in some cases. And if that's true, this healing of that, honoring the father, honoring God the Father, in that broader sense, it's going to be a very healing opportunity for you to come back to a place of peace with yourself. 12th house also represents faraway lands, places that are at a distance, foreigners as well. And Saturn rules that ninth house, which represents similar things, people who are foreign, people who have different ideas to us, or getting ideas that feel will expand our sense of self or our life or our vision for life. So also you might find yourself benefiting from connections with people who are far away, or from lands or ideas that are concepts that are from faraway places, or faraway times, from ancient times, for example, ancient concepts, things like Stoicism, which is very Saturn in Aries. That Stoic, Saturn ruled by Mars, like sort yourself out, stop whining, sort yourself out, and that's very helpful. It's super constructive because it can actually be very motivating, and with the energy of a fixed sign, that can be focused on what comfort I have or what I need to feel comfortable. This is a time to recognize that there's going to be opportunities or need to recognize where you can just be okay, you can be fine, you can be safe, you can thrive, even with less, even with what might have previously felt like discomfort. You can still learn to be comfortable, and you can learn to be okay with less. And this can be a really wonderful time to also pare things down and simplify, especially as Mars is in the fourth house, that can allow you to separate yourself with a new inspiration around the history of the family or connection to things that have gone before, letting go any impulsive hoarding or any impulsive holding on to things being a particular way. This is the right divine timing to let go of more of that for your own freedom. And that's also what Uranus has been trying to demonstrate, let's say, over the last 7 years. So all very timely. Uranus will be going through your second house in July for until November, and that's going to be a shakeup in terms of your possessions as well. So this can be a time where you really reflect on that. What do I really need? Um, what is important to me? What's necessary? What is just a nice thing to have? And is that something that I can feel more power, more empowered by not being dominated by it? Which just recalls, for example, this story of Nelson Mandela when he was on Robben Island, and the guards would withhold cigarettes from him in those days when he smoked. They would withhold cigarettes as a way of punishing or manipulating their behavior. And he realized that the only way to reclaim his power was to quit smoking. So this is one way of looking at this moment in time. If smoking dominates, then you're influenced by the cigarettes. You're being dominated by something. So again, that question I was asking in an earlier video, who's your daddy? What is your vice that you can let go of now, that you can take back control of yourself, so that you recognize that actually you are stable and you have so much self-mastery that will bring you more benefit, especially when then Saturn moves into your house of self in 2028, and then crosses over through Taurus from that point on. So a great opportunity to really see yourself from a different place and to bring more stability into your life. So best wishes, Taurus. I'll see you in the next video. So Gemini, this is happening in your 11th house of social influences and your vision for the future, long-term goals, the people that you spend time with based on something that you share, a shared idea, shared purpose, a shared religion or political belief or whatever, a shared community. And the 11th house is very much also tied to gains. And so there's something here about what you might gain from what you do. And it can be an opportunity for you to recognize how you might better stabilize long-term gains. So with Saturn there, you're becoming more aware of how you can use your resources. This will be especially true once Jupiter moves into your second house, which I'll do another video about, but that's starting from the 9th of June for over a year, from till June 2026. Jupiter will be in your second house at the same time that Saturn and Neptune are going through your 11th house. So those are money houses. This is a great opportunity to recognize where you might need to be more serious about your gains, serious about your future vision, serious about what's necessary, how what you do might have to support your family, or how you might require support if that's needed. Certainly, it has something to do with your work life, because Jupiter in your first house is ruling your 10th house, where we find the North Node, but also Mars, which is all about this, the rulership of Saturn, Neptune, is also ruling your sixth house, as well as that 11th house. So there's something here with reference to your working life and your working habits that also might be worth reflecting on in terms of your, the way that you reach out into your future or into life. Um, Checking if that's also working for your health in a general sense, because Mars ruling the sixth house can lead to issues around inflammation, leading to, difficulties with health or challenges with the day-to-day stuff. That might actually be due to overdoing it. That would be the Neptune aspect of this 11th house thing, being a little too over optimistic, a little bit too big picture, where Saturn can help you ground that into something more real. So definitely can be very constructive for you, Gemini, where you're grounding your vision in something that can be of service also to a broader community. It's not only your long-term vision and how that's going to serve you in the future, but it's also how it can serve society. Maybe there's something really personal that you're realizing, that you've got this thing, you've got this gift that can bring you to a whole new place. And at the same time, along with Jupiter in your first, at the time of this ingress of Saturn into Aries, coming in with Neptune, you've got Mars, ruling all of that 11th house stuff from the third house of your willpower and your choice and your short-term goals. And so you're kind of saying, I can now kind of gather in some sense of what I need to contribute, what I need to do, and take action based on something pragmatic and really clear. This is the new goal. This is the new thing. Maybe a new way of communicating. So that third house represents all the ways that you connect with people. When Mars is there, it's a super busy time, and especially with Jupiter in the first, you can be super busy. So it can actually be, again, a really good thing having that Saturn, connecting in that way of slowing down the vision, or feeling like, okay, there's a restriction. Is it coming from society itself, or is it coming from my need to test my ideas against what is feasible, and what is realistic? It doesn't mean that the idea is necessarily wrong. It means that the approach to the idea might need some revision, or the way of going forward through that inspiration requires more support, more teamwork, um, more reflection, more time. That's also Saturn. More time might be required to achieve your goals, and that's fine. And equally with Saturn going through the 11th, especially with Neptune, you will be it will be very helpful to recognize who is genuinely on your side, who's got your back. With Neptune going through the 11th, there may be a sense of not really being solidly backed by the people, the society around you, whereas Saturn comes in and says, well, look, let's get clear about that. Who is genuinely a friend and who's not a friend? So you can be more grounded in, how you surround yourself by the people in your life. Venus is trining from the 11th back to the third house. So there is something here that can connect you also online, of course, like all of us, for good or bad, or connect you into a new community. Very creative, very favorable dynamic of Venus trining Mars is a wonderful creative impulse, and it's in a fire sign, so very inspired. very much willing for, willing to have new connections, going out into the world with new ideas. So really a great opportunity to revise your sense of self. This is also happening for some of you around the time of your birthday. And so the sun is in your sign, it's in Gemini, and it's being trined by, or rather, it is trining Pluto. It has just perfected that trine a couple of days before this ingress of Saturn. But it's also, or maybe even just a day before, maybe it's the 24th of May that it does this trine. Either way, it's building within a couple of days on either side. It's building and separating. Let's give or take 2 or 3 days. So we could say from the 22nd of May all the way through to about the 28th of May, you really do have this lovely support from Pluto trining the sun. So for those of you born around that time, or if anybody has the sun at, let's say, 2 of Gemini up until about, what, 4, 5, 6 of Gemini, that is quite significant. It's a lovely birthday present, having this support from Pluto that gives you a boost. It's a dynamic boost that feels like, okay, I'm ready for this new thing, ready for change. And all of these dynamics that also are affecting you with Jupiter going through your house just for the next couple of weeks, really the end of this cycle for you with Jupiter going through your first house and squaring the North Node that it rules in your 10th house, shifting that sense of yourself and how you want to be out in the world, because there's something about the way that you're focusing outwards, that you're thinking more about other people, maybe focusing more on that role of taking responsibility through your vision, through life, rather than focusing on your own comfort or your own sense of self. You're more thinking about going out into the world in a new way. So super, super time. You're also ruled, of course, by Mercury, which is conjoined by Uranus at this time. So Mercury, very soon after Saturn ingresses Aries, is coming into your sign to meet up with the sun as well. That's just by the end of the month. And so that's also a really significant change. It could be also representing something happening around your birthday for some of you, especially the very, very late May Geminis. This is a really significant transit moment in time. And there's something insightful coming that might be coming through a vision that you have, or a dream, or something that comes through a sense of intuition that has been building for you. And so this is a brilliant opportunity for you to set things in motion based on your creative spark, your creative impulses, put your skills to work. Mars in the third is about using your skills, using the verb, using your communication, using your gift of writing or painting, or I don't know, sanding boats, whatever the thing is. You use your skills and bring it out into the world to share, and also potentially for your own personal gain. So we'll talk about all the other dynamics in different videos, but this is a really wonderful opportunity, Gemini. So great opportunity. Also, one last thing is to think of this in terms of healing your role in society, healing your sense of what's available to you, what's possible. Maybe there's also an issue that extends to siblings or extended family, and particularly elder brothers, where we've got Mars in the third house of siblings and extended family and so on, neighbors, people you hang out with for coffee, and it's ruling the 11th house of elder sibling, where we find also Chiron and Eris. And so notice also where perhaps the dynamic of your early childhood, or the dynamic of your, birth order has impacted how you show up out in the world. And this would be an opportunity to heal that too. Recognizing your your unique gifts and your validity, and how you can master yourself to be your own reference point, rather than perhaps if you've experienced some difficulties with an elder sibling that may have been unfriendly or unhelpful to you, or if you've experienced a sense of not being able to really grapple with social connections. This is a really great opportunity also to feel better about that. And this is the birth of that process. So it doesn't have to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen over time. So wonderful, wonderful opportunity for you, Gemini. Be as creative and vocal and, yourself as possible through all of this. And that will help you to connect to your bigger dreams in life. So see you in the next video. Cancer, this whole dynamic is shifting your 10th house, your way of showing up out in the world and the thing that you do out in the world, your capacity to be somebody considered to be an authority figure potentially. Saturn going through the 10th house will change your relationship to how society sees you and your relationship to society. So I use my own example. I have Cancer moon and ascendant, and for example, when Saturn last moved through my 10th house, uh, then that was when I got married. So remember, Saturn rules the seventh house of relationship. It rules the eighth house of marriage and intimacy, other people's resources. Saturn moved through my 10th house. That was when I realized I wanted to leave the international institutions and I no longer wanted to do that work, even though I had studied all those things. And that was my whole sort of sense of purpose and everything, working in these broader institutions, save the world from itself. And then I realized that that's not going to happen. So at that point, that was when I really changed my sense of self and my ambitions, let's say. And I left the commission at that time. I started to work in different roles, testing, should I get into management consultancy? Should I throw it all away and become a nutritionist? I studied all of these different things. In the end, what happened is I became pregnant with my first child. And I started teaching yoga, which was my passion. Now, Mars rules the 10th house. It also rules the fifth house of your self-expression, as well as children. And so there may be something in you that you're birthing as well, with Saturn going through the 10th house, that requires more of your commitment, more of your time. Obviously, if you have a child, or if you're starting a business, or you're starting a new way of showing up that's independent. So Cancer does really well by taking its own responsibility for its career, especially if your midheaven is also in the 10th house, working really well that way, taking responsibility for your way of engaging out in your working world. This is a great time for that, reconsidering what you do, taking it to the next level, becoming ready to work hard, but with a vision. So that Saturn Neptune is saying, I know why I'm working hard. It's for this thing. I'm working with this vision in mind. And especially because Jupiter is moving from the 12th house, where it's been for a year, refining your sense of what you have faith in, and where Saturn has been also for 2.5 years, testing your faith, testing what you believe, testing even what you're doing. Is this the right thing? Should I be doing this? Do I really believe this? Not even, maybe still with that question up in the air, while Saturn is still going to be moving back and forth between the 10th and the 9th house. And then Jupiter will move into the first house, where Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, and that will be a wonderful opportunity to expand based on this new sense of the vision that you want to manifest in your career. So it can be in the beginning phases that there's a testing. It's like, I'm not sure, but I think it might be this. Let's try this. That can also provoke a certain amount of insecurity or concern around what might be possible for you, or what society might require or not be ready for yet. So you might be a little bit too ahead of the curve. Cancer often is ahead of the curve because of that Aries in the 10th house. So it starts things. It's like, let's do this new thing. It's very pioneering in the way that Cancer operates in the world. Then people cotton on, and then everybody's doing it, but you already did it years before. And so this is also where you can start to feel, okay, now I can take responsibility for that. I can be perhaps recognized for that, or I can be seen as the guide, the authority, the person who can be referred to. So you're bringing out whatever was working through you in the 9th house, and you're taking it out into your career now, both because of the Neptune as well as the Saturn influence between the 9th and 10th houses. So the world will notice what you're doing, or at least your community, your local reference points, including maybe your own family. So this could be very much for Cancers, an extension of your role as a parent, or having a new vision of your role in your family, expanding your family. You've got Mars in the 2nd house, which represents families as well, your sense of connection with your family. You might need to take on more responsibility since it's Mars, and Mars, when it's in the 2nd house, suggests that there's not usually a whole lot of support coming from the family. It's you doing the work, it's you doing the supporting, you having to take responsibility. And this implies also financially, as well as in terms of the support that you might need to receive or give for the family, and especially for children. So Mars, of course, ruling the fifth house of children. Think of that sense of what you create in the broadest sense of what you create biologically, as well as what you create in the artistic or creative sense of the word, or even in the material sense. This is fifth house is very entrepreneurial, and with Mars in the second house, there's also a strong drive around money, around the way you might earn new opportunities. Here we've got Venus, who rules your 11th house, by the way, which is the house of gains, inter alia. Venus in the 10th is trining that Mars at the time of this ingress, bringing an enormous amount of support for the vision that you're holding for your career, your image, also helping with that, supporting the new thing that you'd like to move into in your career. Equally, in the house of gains, you've got an exalted moon. Your ruler, the moon, is exalted in the 11th house of gains and people, and the social support that you might get and accolades. So you have help from people, and those people will be different as well, in the sense of not necessarily those who you expect to help you will be the ones expecting. That's often the case, but especially at this time, because we've got Uranus with Mercury, so friends might pop out of unexpected places, or on the contrary, friends might disappear where you thought, oh, they'll be there for me, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, where are you? Where did you go? And that can also be the dynamic that helps to teach you who is with you and who's not. And that will especially be part of the bigger lesson of Uranus in the 11th, where your social context has changed dramatically since May 2018. So virtually exactly 7 years. Um, and then, of course, the Pluto in the eighth house, changing your relationship to what is unconscious or hidden, or traumatic or challenging or difficult, or also equally what you gain from others. This is the stuff that we relate to that comes from others. And this, where the second house is what are your values and what do you value, what you bring to the table. The eighth house is other people's values and what they contribute to your life and how that might be impacting you as well. The sun is currently in the 12th house of self-undoing, but also the house of loss. And so you might be recognizing where, again, there may be some issue around a change of values, a letting go, an ending to something. This is a favorable thing. It's a recognition of something has to shift. It could be an ancestral story equally, because we're looking at Jupiter in the 12th. Jupiter ruling the ninth house, which can represent fathers as well. The 10th house can be fathers equally, but more parents in general, both parents or the influence of the parent type figures. So there's something here that's shifting that might be about letting go of a concept, or letting go of a person, or letting go of maybe even a financial support, for example. Letting go of a way of working, because Jupiter represents your sixth house of the everyday and the work that you do, the stuff that you have to take care of. And in the 12th house, there can be a real appreciation, a real understanding, appreciation in the sense of you become aware of, acknowledgement of the things that you are doing that are not constructive and they haven't been helping you. So this is an opportunity to say, well, if I want to get here, where that north node is, in the ninth house of my purpose, I need to stop faffing around. I'm speaking to myself when I say this. I need to stop, overextending. I need to stop trying to get my finger into too many things, and recognizing that actually that's doing me a disservice. That's the 12th house of the self-undoing. So this is a really wonderful time to get very clear. What are my values? That's Mars here in the second house. What are my values? What's important? How am I going to earn money? How am I going to deal with this thing? And then the way that you can do that can be changed in mysterious and surprising ways. And the people that you might be doing that with also can change in mysterious and surprising ways. The fact that your ruler is exalted at this time, ruled by this Venus in a lovely trine by to Mars from the 10th house to the second house, is extremely fortuitous. It's a very supportive element in terms of new prospects in career, new prospects in finances, all of which require a certain amount of reality. You know, what am I willing to work hard at? What am I willing to take responsibility for? What might I need to sacrifice? What do I need to become aware of? And Pluto, really, for the last 2 years, has also been focusing on that. What do I need to become aware of? But also, what am I afraid of? And what do I need to transform in myself through the things that might be like family inherited fears or patterns or crises or traumas that I need to grapple with? And that will be a process of going towards the new thing, because that Pluto is also sextiling the Neptune Saturn for most of 2025 and 2026 in a supportive way from the eighth house of what other people bring. That also includes client income, for example, or like unearned income. It's stuff that comes from royalties. It's stuff that comes from um, tax rebates or things like that, money that comes through others. And that's in a sextile to Saturn Neptune that holds for a long time, and it's trining the sun, which is extremely favorable. And then later from July, it's also going to be sextiling Uranus in the 12th house. So your insight and your intuition and your connection to the unseen is going to accelerate. So Cancers tend anyway to be quite sensitive and aware, intuitive, and so on. And I suspect that that's going to increase. So this can also be an opportunity for you to reflect on, you know, how can I also step back a little bit? Um, especially once Uranus goes into the 12th house, how can I find a way to come home to myself, to be able to take stock and recharge in order to do all of these things that Saturn is going to require of me? The more that what you do involves your vision for healing, for inspiring, for connecting your spiritual life with your action and the thing that you do out in the world, the more that it connects to healing, to relational qualities, to the dynamic of what it means to be human and what it means to heal and show the way, the more you will succeed in the years ahead. Because this is very much the energy that is supported at this time for Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. So here's the other meaning of that sort of let's stop faffing around. It's the South Node is in the third house. So it's about having that vision and working on a longer term sense of what I'm here for that has been changing for Cancer, but also bringing it from the highest place of what is my purpose in this time? How can I teach something that has a human importance, a bigger divine importance, even a sense of what it means to be human? How can I be a reflection of that, especially once Jupiter enters into the first house? And I'll do a separate video on that. And letting go of the day-to-day stuff, letting go or finding a way of not being distracted so much by the day-to-day. But it can also be with the South Node in the third, actually inspired thinking, inspired talking, inspired words, inspired writing. That's certainly what I'm hoping for, whereas I have to rewrite my book this summer. And this is an opportunity to become much, much more of your genuine self, where that soft and nurturing and protective quality becomes what you can offer out to others, but from a place of authority. It's not a soft place to abuse or to be taken advantage of, but it's rather people looking at that and saying, actually, this is the way forward. This is the thing to do. So really a brilliant opportunity for Cancer. I see this as extremely constructive. It's a beautiful ingress chart and a fantastic opportunity to think long term and think big, because this is a whole new career cycle that is starting. Saturn is squaring yourself, so there's definitely going to be a sense of I have to compromise something of what I would want to achieve the thing I have to achieve. This might be also where the relationship dynamics become tested, potentially new ways of relating, new ways of living, possibly a new place to live in. But that's also something that's been addressed with the South Node going through the fourth house from mid 2023 until beginning of 2025. It's not that you can't move again, but it's just that issue has been very much highlighted already. Um, so again, if I use the my personal story from the previous time, which again wasn't with Neptune, when I had my first baby, of course, this changes your whole social status. You go from being a young, um, well, I also got married, so that was it. I got married and had a child within the space of 18 months or so. And that is a significant change of social status. I'm now the lady, rather than the, sort of young woman on her own, or, I wasn't on my own, but, walking around as a single woman. I'm suddenly now married and with a baby. Now, that's not going to happen to all of you. And of course, it depends on, is this your second Saturn return? Of course, I'm not going to be having a baby now. But just to say that these are the types of changes for Cancer that can be expected. It could be a business partnership also, for example, because Saturn also rules the seventh house of contractual relationships and business partners and like meaning marital partners and people who are important, or clients as well. The seventh house is clients. And how do you engage with your clients? Well, this is all going to be different now. There's something that's changing, that it's going to be something you restructure so that it works better for your sense of your overall ambitions in life. And this is long term. This is going to be for the next 29, 30 years, because Saturn only comes through this part of your chart every 3 decades. So this is a big shift, and that shift will hold. So you want this to be something that you give a lot of consideration to and a lot of reflection to. It will be helped a lot by Jupiter going into your first house. I'll do a separate video on that. And by the way, if you hear my dog snoring, that's not me, that's my dog. Um, but I will do a separate video on that. And it's also just to say that once Jupiter moves into the first house, there can be a potential for expanding too quickly. And if so, Saturn will sort you out. So, so not to say you shouldn't try, but just be aware that if things get somehow, if you have to backtrack or if things get delayed, it's okay. It's what happens. And you're testing this new version of yourself and how you show up in the world over the next 2.5-ish years. That will be tested right away, because as once Jupiter moves into Cancer, into your first house, by the middle of the month, I think it's the 15th of the month, it squares Saturn, and then very soon after that, 16th or 17th, it squares Neptune as well. So there will be a kind of, okay, let's jump in, and then, oops, wait a minute, let's see what's restricting me here. What do I need to adjust? So again, it's a test. It's much more helpful than it will be a hindrance, but it may feel a little bit frustrating. But don't make that mean that you're not doing the right thing. It's about double checking that you're doing the right thing. All right, I will come back with another video for you. And as I mentioned already, in the Aries segment, I'm offering a discount for people who have Saturn in Aries natally. And so if you'd like to do that, check the comments section and the first comment pinned, or check the description box below the video. And I'll see you in the next video. So Leo, this is Saturn ingress with Neptune is in your ninth house of the purpose that you feel you have in this lifetime, and your sense of what's important to you. What do you have faith in? What's your vision for life? How do you inspire yourself and others? And how do you bring that inspiration into your career and what you do? This is a really brilliant opportunity to really expand that sense of yourself, maybe also connecting in a new way with your father, because the ninth house also represents fathers, and Leos, Sun, Moon, and Rising, generally speaking, also have father stuff to deal with in life. It's often what is a very big theme. Grandfathers or fathers are a very big theme for Leos. And this may be about you also becoming a father. That can also be part of this bigger story. Certainly there's a lovely supportive trine from Mars in your house of self, making you feel very strong and dynamic, inspired and driven for action, to Venus, which is in your ninth house. Venus loves being in the ninth because it's all about thinking big and thinking in terms of inspiration and connecting. And so that's really lovely, because it's adding to this really supportive quality, this supportive dynamic potential that's coming through this connection between Saturn and Neptune. And also, of course, your ruler, the sun, is also being trined, which is very favorable from the 11th house of your gains and your connections with other people, your sense of your future, your ambitions for the your sort of long term, the vision that you have for your life. So lots of visionary dynamics here. Your sun is being trined by Pluto in the 7th house of relationship and contractual relations, business partnerships or client relations or your intimate relationships and how you also work, how you operate in life where there may be power dynamics involved in how you show up and how others might push back. So this is also a really opportune time for you to think about that. How do I engage in relationships? And is that working for me long term? Is that working for me in terms of how I reach out into social connections, into social groups or um, organizations that I belong to, for example? Is that working for me in terms of the money that I gain from what I do, especially if you work for yourself? Now, you also have this wonderful square where Jupiter is in the same house of your social connections and your vision for the future and your friends and yeah, your sense of reaching into the aspirations you have for your life. And Jupiter is also ruling the 11th house, sorry, the 8th house, where we find the North Node that it's ruling until the middle of sort of July 2026. And so there's something here about what you share with others in an intimate way, what you receive from others that is also part of this bigger sense of the Jupiterian quality, let's say, of your connection to the world outside or society as a whole. Maybe you've got a new way of seeing yourself and how you want to engage in society. Also, because Uranus has been moving through your 10th house of career and social status, and maybe you're connecting now more seriously to this 7 year now change in social status. How does the world see me? How do I want the world to be? And how do I fit myself into that dynamic? How do I participate in that dynamic? And and the Venus that is ruling your 10th house is in the 9th house. So it's coming from a longer term vision for why am I here? The purpose, the overall purpose of life and the thing I have faith in, the thing I want to bring out to the public or bring out to the people through what I think is important and what I have faith in. So really lovely the opportunity here for Leos to assert yourself in this new way in life and see that from a visionary place. It might be an opportunity also to learn new things. It can be learning from doing as well, because Saturn represents the 6th house of your work. Your work can become more inspired. For example, with Saturn there, with Neptune especially, a deeper inspiration in what you do. There may be a quality of guide, a teacher, pathfinder, wayfinder, whatever you want to call that. Um, Spiritual counselor, guidance counselor, astrologer for that matter. Pisces is your 8th house, ruled by Jupiter, obviously, and then that's also where we have the North Node, and the 9th house is the aspect of counseling that's related to astrology. So this could be a really opportune time. Again, for those of you who are listening, you're probably already doing stuff like this. So things along the lines of the occult practice or bringing that occult practice out through your wisdom that you've gained with the last 3 years of Saturn going through Pisces, roughly 3 years, 2.5 at this point, where you've mastered something of the occult, where you've mastered something of what you know in the mystery school stuff of life or the maybe psychological foundations of life. So this can be also helping people psychologically or working through your own psychological stuff to find improvement over how you feel about yourself and your life. Because also Mars is ruling the 4th house of your home and family lineage, and but also that's your psychological home and what makes you feel secure psychologically and emotionally as well. And Saturn is ruled by Mars, which is in your 1st house of self. So there is a dynamic here that can be very beneficial if you recognize that you've come through something and you're able to then find your new place, your new role. There may be a test of what you believe with Saturn in the 9th house. There may be a testing of new dynamics around religion or spirituality or political dynamics, for example. And when I say that, I don't mean that just now, but over the context of the next 2 or 3 years, where you might find that it's like I have to find my own way through. And that's very truthful. It's very common for Leo because 9 houses from Leo is Aries, where there's I kind of go my own way. I have my own thoughts. I have my own way of looking at things, my own sort of way of being guided. Um, that can also be part of the helpful aspect of Saturn with Neptune going through the ninth house, where Aries is the sign in the ninth house, and Mars makes you perhaps very impulsive and potentially also changeable in terms of faith. Um, so this can ground yourself, whatever faith or what inspires you, philosophical inspiration, whatever that is. Here again, for Leo, Stoicism is a um, really great dynamic for you to reflect on because it's got this quality here of Saturn ruled by Mars. It's like, just sort yourself out and taking responsibility for yourself and doing something in a way that feels that I understand why I do what I do, and that is also a potential for humbling. I almost said humiliation, but I don't mean that. It's a humbling experience where Saturn in Aries, especially now with Neptune and the Chiron Eris conjunction, do listen to the introduction for more on that. And in the house of the Father, in the house of the higher purpose, in the house of God the Father, we require humility to be spiritual. There's a sense of having to check the ego at the door, and that's where the spiritual process comes through. But if it's a self abnegation, that's not spiritual, because we can't deny the beauty of the human form or the beauty of the human spirit. It's to recognize that we are not the be all and end all, and we are certainly not the source of anything. So we are reliant on something that is bigger or higher or deeper than us. And so this could also be the beauty of having that Saturn Neptune going through your ninth house for so many years, 2.5 at least. Um, yeah, it'll set the stage for a vision and a sense of purpose that then becomes easier to manifest in a maybe more responsible way as Saturn moves into your 10th house of your career and taking sort of social responsibility. And Neptune stays in the ninth house for then many, many years after. And that becomes much more now, because you've created that container with Saturn, Neptune already, you then can flow with that Neptune in the ninth house, and it can be taking you into a much more creative and inspired place because you've built those foundations already. So, yeah, super. And then by the time that happens, yes, so you'll have had Jupiter moving through your first house as well in 26 to 27 at the same time that we've got Saturn moving further in. So it's a brilliant opportunity for you to really expand your sense of how can I inspire? How can I feel inspired? How can I minimize what is not inspiring and get it out of the way so that in that stoic way, but in the stoically sort of inspiring way, I can achieve my goals and I can do the thing and I can be that leader, which is what I've come here to be. So good luck with all this, Leo. This is a beautiful opportunity for you in your dynamic, inspired self. All right, see you in the next video. Virgo, this is happening in your eighth house of intimacy. Saturn is meeting up with Neptune, where Venus is also there with Chiron and Eris, healing maybe old family patterns, or maybe a feeling of finding it difficult to connect, finding it difficult to be at ease, finding your potential for recognizing where you've been overly concerned with yourself. This is one of the reasons that Virgo can have such a difficult time, because the eighth house of the psychology and the intimate life and the fears and challenges and crises and so on is Aries, and it's ruled by Mars, which can be tending towards a more self-focused way of living. And this can help to, much like with what I've just said with Leo there, to become, to humble that. Again, that is also a Virgo term, but Saturn in Aries can bring a true humility of service, especially as Pluto is in your sixth house of service and changing your everyday life. So with Saturn, Neptune in the eighth house, this can bring you to this place of being confident, not fearful, and recognizing that you have this courage. It can be certainly with Saturn in the eighth can feel a bit lonely, or it can feel a little bit isolating as well, where there may be a need to recognize that you have to go through things on your own. Nobody can mature for you, for example. It's about perhaps also taking responsibility for how you engage with other people through marriage or through sharing resources of some kind. How you connect to the occult as well, how you connect to um, wisdom traditions or the sort of mystery school stuff of life, because this is also where you can really master something like astrology or witchcraft. I say that laughing, but it is an actual thing. It's just that we've become so separated from all those things. Shamanic practices, for example. All of those ancient wisdom traditions can be mastered, and going through the process of initiation, going through the process of deep self-awareness and understanding that Saturn, Neptune can bring you in the eighth house, can make you a respected sort of resource. You can master all of these things and bring that out into the ninth house when Saturn moves in 2028 as a teacher, as a person who works in a counseling capacity or in a capacity that is really recognized as the true healer that you can be, Virgo. So there's a part of you that is on this journey of changing, while the South Node is in your house of self, you're letting go of ways of being. You're becoming a different person anyway, much more spiritualizing also, if you allow it to be. And also your ruler, Mercury, is super engaged with both Algol as well as Uranus at this time of the Saturn ingress, with its connection there to Neptune. And that's brilliant because it's giving you deep insight, deep inspiration in the ninth house of your vision for why am I here? What's my purpose? And that holds because this is an ingress chart, is kind of like a natal chart for this, let's say, the quality of this moment in time as we go forward. The Saturn coming into Aries, meeting up with Neptune, and having all of these really supportive, dynamic insights is extremely constructive for moving into a capacity for you, for example, as a healer or as somebody who works in a way that feels like there's a genuine soul-centered service. Is that enough S's? It's a genuine, feeling. I was going to say sense, but I have to leave the S's out. A feeling, a notion, yes, we'll say it, a sense of being here for this purification role that you have come here to learn. That is not about being a doormat. It's not about being responsible for everybody else's stuff and trying to rescue everybody else, but it's really coming from a higher impulse that says, you know what, I understand things, I have this capacity, I have this connection to healing. It's not based on interference, it's based on capacity, it's based on what I can do. So this is where Pluto in the sixth house then is trining your sun, rather the sun of this transit chart, in your 10th house of career. And that represents the thing that you do and how people see you. And that's really inspiring. Again, coming from the work house where Pluto is, changing your everyday, changing the job sort of feeling of your work or the connection that you might have with colleagues or the nature of your work, and bringing it out there in the 10th house and making that something that you identify with as a part of your vocation or part of your ambition in life, part of how you want to be seen. Pluto also in the sixth is is showing you also where healing for yourself might be necessary, or anything that might show up as healing can be worked through with the same courage that Saturn is bringing in the eighth house of overcoming fear, um, taking it up a level, more spiritual, more creative, more innovative, where Saturn Neptune comes together, and but Saturn grounding this new vision, this new sense of self, where Neptune on its own in the eighth house can cause some difficulties in terms of trust, trust around intimacy, or trust in terms of money, other people's money being taken advantage of in some way. Where Saturn comes in there, it makes you much more keenly aware of your role, your responsibility around that, and it can help you become more clear, so that there's less of a sense of being vulnerable to issues around trust. Issues around being taken advantage of in some way, in all those eighth house potential ways. And then Saturn can also bring about that potential for healing these things, because Saturn does rule your sixth house of illness and healing, overcoming challenges, as well as your fifth house of your creative self-expression and children and creative projects and so on. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why Virgos, Sun, Moon, and Rising are quite conservative, because their fifth house of self-expression is ruled by Saturn. It's Capricorn, and so there can be a feeling of self-limitation, and this is where you can really understand where that comes from. Does that come from a family pattern? Does that come from a fear of not being accepted in intimate situations? Does that come from a fear of how I fit in terms of connecting deeply, whether it be emotionally or psychologically or sexually, with another person? Very healing potential here, very, very deeply healing. Jupiter also in the 10th house is squaring the nodal axis, which is in your first and seventh house. So there's something here about a potential change of status that's coming through, again, perhaps a marital situation or a marriage type partnership, or a new dynamic of a career or professional relationships, partnerships that can really bring benefit to you. And that benefit will be seen when Jupiter goes into the 11th house of gains and your social connections, as it becomes exalted then in the 11th house. It's bringing a lot of goodness there when Jupiter goes into Cancer. Jupiter also rules your fourth house, so this can be an opportunity to change your connection to home and family and lineage, whether it be your home in the physical sense of where do I live, but also the inner home of how do I feel secure? How do I feel grounded? How can I feel good in myself? This is also why, for example, Virgo tends to have a certain anxious disposition, because also the fourth house of, foundation of psychology and emotional and psychological groundedness is actually ruled by Jupiter at Sagittarius, so it can be a little bit unsettled. It's a little bit too overactive. Again, that's the archetype, not necessarily the case for your chart, but that's the reason behind it. So also Uranus with your ruler up in the ninth, just again, really inspired thinking. So think big, think in terms of the bigger picture. Why am I here? And as Mars is in the 12th house of spirit also, and self-undoing, you really find, okay, I understand now what I've been doing, or what I've been believing, or what kind of thoughts I'm thinking that are actually holding me back. And I know what to do about that. And this is Mars trining Venus, Mars being the ruler of all of that eighth house and all your third house of the mind. Really great opportunity to reconsider how your thoughts are affecting your reality, reconsider how your creative impulse, or even your romantic impulse, because Mars trining Venus is very romantic, especially as Saturn in the eighth rules, the fifth of house of love and romance and so on, in the house of intimacy. So a really wonderful, inspired energy for love and romance. But also coming from a place of getting over insecurities, or getting over mental, maybe compulsions or compulsive thinking, or behaviors that are just not helpful, that you allow yourself to completely transform. This is also part of the dynamic of the Pluto, which is sextiling the Neptune, Saturn, and then eventually where the Sun is like a placeholder, where we're going to find Uranus in the 10th house. So big, big, big shifts for you in career and your social status, your intimate life, your married life, your everyday life, um, your health life as well, mental and physical health. So use this more inspired energy that we have right now to think big for yourself. Think, envisage a beautiful future for yourself, and make the most of this lovely opportunity. Okay, Virgo, see you in the next video. And Libra, this is happening in your house of other. It's about your relationships, your partnerships with others. There's going to be a really big shift here for you in a sense that your whole dynamic around relationships can change how you feel about yourself, what you feel is a priority in your life. It's going to be an opportunity to question things like, where do I live? How do I live? Does that make me feel good? You know, Saturn rules your house of home and family, and you're in family of origin, your lineage, your people, your nation, even relating to all of that is shifting, it's changing. There's something renewing there. It also rules your house of children. Saturn rules Pluto while it's in Aquarius in the house of children. And this is also where you might find a new relationship emerging with your house, with your own children, or with your creative projects, with inspired projects, projects that are done in partnership with other people. So this can also be where business partners are either consolidated or changing, or you're thinking, I need a business partner because I can't do all this new thing on my own, this new growth, this new way of being, because we do also have the North Node in your sixth. And that's reestablishing a new way of showing up every day. And that's in a square currently with Saturn, with Jupiter. From your ninth house of your sense of purpose, your higher belief system or your faith or your vision for why you're here, what's my life all about? And you're bringing that into your everyday life. And now with Saturn having left this sector, kind of putting all your ducks in a row, now it's like, well, who do I do that with? Am I with the right people? Am I with the right person? This might be about marriage. Now with Saturn, Neptune, especially as your ruler Venus is in the house of marriage at the same time, being trined by Mars in your house of the future, your sense of what you want out of your future. If you're in a relationship that's not working, we've also had Uranus in the house of intimacy, the house of marriage. If there has been a sense that this is not really working, I'm doing way too much compromising, which is a typical kind of a Libra thing, I need to make a change, and that will change, and you will be empowered by this change. This change will bring you benefit because Jupiter is on the verge of moving into your 10th house where it's exalted for Libra rising. Um, and that's going to improve overall your sense of self and your overall condition of life. But if you're with the right person and if everything is going well, it might just mean that the circumstances around, for example, your living circumstances, or like you're moving, or you're having to change the dynamic in terms of who does what, who does the dishes, who brings in the bacon, as it were, um, working through things in a solid relationship will bring you a more lasting quality to this relationship. So Saturn is exalted for Libra. Saturn does really, really well for Libra. So you have the capacity to work through things, but you want to be honest with yourself and recognize where you are not deceiving yourself. That's the downside of the Neptune in seventh house. There can be self-deception or an overgiving to others at your own expense. And with Saturn there, this helps. It doesn't, it won't have such an overwhelming effect, but the Saturn is there with Neptune to get you to really reconsider, is this the right person? Are these the right people? Is this the right team? Am I relating in the right way? Am I relating in the best way for me? That's also part of the Chiron Eris dynamic I spoke about in the beginning. So lots and lots of opportunities for change and healing in the quality of relationship that's going to affect all of your life because it calls back on yourself and how you show up, but also the foundation of your life. And whether it be psychological and emotional foundation of feeling secure or not in your life, or it's a literal one of where do I live, how do I live, with whom do I live, or the dynamic of work and your career. How does all of this support me or not? Do my relationships support my career aims? Would be one way of reflecting on this moment in time. And so it's a big deal when Saturn moves into an angular house. It's a really big deal. So this can be a great opportunity for reform, transformation. As I mentioned, Venus, your ruler, is trined by Mars. So she just came up on a trine to Mars a couple of days before this ingress. And that's also very favorable because it's been a challenging time with your ruler having been retrograde since the 1st of March, going back and forth between your 7th and your 6th houses, where you may have questioned a lot about your work dynamics or your partnerships or your, the burden that you carry for others, for example, the relationship dynamic in terms of fairness and equality or in terms of harmony. That would have been a big consideration. Money, who brings home the bacon, as I mentioned, but also now in this dynamic where Venus is ruled by this Mars and trining Mars, that's in your house of gains from what you do, but also the future and your vision for your life and the future. There's a really constructive dynamic here, very supportive energy for you. So again, you're going to have Jupiter at the top of your chart for another year. So it's already been at the top in the 9th house where it loves to be, expanding your ideas and your sense of why you're here, what's important to you, what do you believe in? And then the Jupiter going into your 10th house can just bring massive career growth and opportunity. So the Saturn here in your 7th house with Neptune is asking you to be think long term in terms of who do you hang out with, who's the person in my life that is bringing me support or not, who is uplifting and who's not, who's on my team and who's not. That's also where the South Node in the 12th helps you to shed patterns of behavior, especially ways of thinking, because it's Virgo there in the 12th, ruled by Mercury, patterns of behavior, ways of thinking, ways of behaving that are not constructive. So all of this can come down to the quality of relationships for you as well. So the way you show up with the new sense of how you want to be seen, how you want to be noticed, how you want to be acknowledged in life, with the Pluto going through your 5th, now trining the Sun, which is in the house of its joy, in the 9th house, trining you. It's really, really favorable, super for, really, if you have a vision board, if that's your thing, if you have a journal that you write in, if that's your thing, just laying out a vision for your future is really, really supported right now. So make use of this time. Certainly make use of the, let's say, 3 months or so that Saturn is going into Aries to set the groundwork for when it comes back in 2026, because this is a brilliant opportunity for all of us, and especially for you in one of the angular houses. You're going to really notice the difference. You're going to notice the change. 2025 and 6 up to 2028 for you, the big changes are happening. So good luck with everything there, Libra, and I'll see you in the next video. Scorpio, we have this event of Saturn moving into your 6th house, combining with Neptune there in your 6th house of health, everyday work, your things that you have to overcome, the obstacles that you need to work through. One of the reasons why Scorpio is kind of fearless and gets stuff done and moves mountains is because Mars also rules your 6th house of obstacles and difficulties and contracts and all the schlepping that has to be done in the day-to-day stuff. So Mars is very good for you in the day-to-day capacity, that your capacity is very, very strong. And now with Saturn, with Neptune in the 6th house, it's also going to help you build capacity. It's going to help you stabilize. It's going to help you also realize where things that may have felt a little bit, especially with Saturn in the 5th house, for example, for the last 2+ years, 2.5 years, and Neptune having been there for many, many years, you might have realized that certain things that felt better before don't work any longer, particularly things that used to make you happy that no longer make you happy. So as Saturn was going through the fifth house from March 2023 until this point, it was showing you where you may have over romanticized things. You may have um, overestimated or underestimated your relationship with your children, neglected things like that, perhaps neglected your creative side as well, maybe your artistic side, or you were using it but not really feeling the benefit of it. Now with Saturn going in the sixth house, you can stabilize things and make things mm, kind of your daily thing, like whatever the last couple of years of Saturn in your fifth house created for you and stabilized based on what you love or what's important to you. Now, when it goes in the sixth house, it becomes a part of your everyday, and you're bringing that out into the everyday. So Venus is also in your sixth house, currently making a trine to your ruler, Mars, at the top of your chart. So there's something here about your ambitions and your drives, your wish to leave a legacy, your wish to show up in a particular way, the dynamic around your social status, which can include things like married or not married, divorced, etc. Being a parent, not a parent, all those different ways of showing up socially, and your ambitions, of course, and the way you want to be, how you show up outside the front door. This is very, very much related to the dynamic of this Saturn with Neptune in your sixth house from this point on. There's a healing capacity around this too. There's a quality of your own health requiring healing or needing to finally be recognized as done. The healing has been done, or you're aware of what is important to you through the way that you express your everyday life, your habits, what supports you, what doesn't support you. One of the challenges with this Saturn, pardon me, the Scorpio Sun, Moon, and Rising is that because Mars is on the sixth house, you can tend to push a lot, push, and not necessarily realize where you're overdoing it. Again, because your capacity is strong, your willfulness, your willpower is strong. You also have, Saturn rules your third house of will and using that will, and you're going to climb that mountain regardless. You got Mars, beating you up in the sixth house, getting you going, and then the Saturn ruling the third house saying, you get down to work. So maybe this is an opportunity for you to recognize, okay, wait a minute, I need to restructure my everyday. I need to restructure my what supports my health or what's detracting from my health. Venus is here in the sixth house, ruling the 12th house of the house of, says, the things that we don't know that we don't know, the 12th house, the mystery stuff that's coming from the unconscious or from, um, early childhood behaviors that never really left. They served a purpose and then they just kind of stuck and they're not really constructive any longer. So that's the self-undoing, or things that we do that are hidden from public view or from our view that are even relational dynamics. That's why also Scorpio is related to infidelity and things like that, because Venus rules the 12th house of relationship dynamics through the Libra quality there. That's again an archetype. I'm not saying that's how you are, just the archetype. And so here we have this potential now to become aware of that and how the relational dynamics, perhaps even with business colleagues or your works colleagues or employee relationships, or just the dynamics of what you prefer every day, are impacting your overall health or what's holding you back, for example. So great opportunity to get serious about things. You're already intense, as we saw. Of course, that's the Mars on the sixth, and also the Saturn ruling your third and your fourth houses. So intense, serious. That's the Saturn way. Maybe this is what you recognize needs to change, because Jupiter also is in your eighth house, bringing you a little bit more levity, a little more optimism. And then when Jupiter goes into the ninth, brings you all kinds of wonderful things, because it's really exalted in the best. It's in a happy place in the ninth house, and also exalted in Cancer for over a year. And I'll do another video on that. But this is contributing to this new sense of what you want to do and how you want to do it. Like recognizing where you've given enough. Enough is enough. I'm done. I'm not doing this any longer. Or whether it's about relationships, I don't want to do this thing anymore in relationship. It's depleting me, or it's disappointing me. It's not what I wanted. It's not what I thought it was. I've now, my eyes have been opened. Um, Pluto in your fourth house is going to transform you in a profound way over the next couple of decades. It's going to really bring you a, a potential for renewing your commitment to what grounds you, what you feel is creating a sense of security. Security is extremely important. Trust and security issues are very important for Scorpio. And with Saturn ruling that fourth house, it's a serious matter. It can be a heavy matter. It can be something that feels even quite depressing. But the energy of this chart can be extremely creative and very uplifting. The trine that's coming from Pluto in your fourth, asking you to transform your relationship to your lineage, to your family, to your roots, to your people, to your land, to property, to your psychological sense of what makes you feel secure, emotional sense of making you feel secure. It's trining the sun in your eighth house of your psychology and the things that you are ready to deal with on an intimate level, including your own self, coming more towards your own intimacy. So that's also very supportive energy for personal change. And that's where we're going to find Uranus in a couple of what is it, 6 or 7 weeks after this process. Let's say 2 months after this process, Uranus moves into that eighth house to replace where the sun is in the trine to Pluto. And that also includes the sextile with Neptune and Saturn in your sixth house. So your psychological foundations, your day-to-day health, your day-to-day work, contribution you make to your day-to-day, or even to your marriage, to your partnership, to who shares what with whom, what do you receive from others. All of that is going to be a really big part of this dynamic, especially through 2025 and 6, but it continues for a much longer period of time. These are very long changes, so your day-to-day is really, really changing, and that will also include a change to how you work with people, how you relate to the people you work with. And especially with your ruler up in the 10th house, are your ambitions still in alignment with what you want? And is that working for you in a healthy way, or in even a financially solvent way? Your creative impulse becomes very important at the moment. Also thinking about the way to express yourself, whether it be through, quite literally generating children, mini-me's, and or is it your creative artistic expression, or a commercial enterprise, or some kind of way of extending your nous in terms of business acumen, which you have very strongly. This is a great time to set up a business, and that would be based on something that you might have established already with Saturn in your fifth, which is the thing that you love to do, and creating business out of that. So wonderful opportunities abound, but it comes through major personal growth that comes from the inside out, Scorpio, which is your forte. That's kind of how you roll. So best wishes for that, Scorpio, and I'll see you in the next video. Sagittarius, this now movement of Saturn from your fourth house into your fifth house is happening in the other fire sign, Aries, which is an inspirational zone. It's a lucky part of your chart. So it's going to lighten the mood somewhat compared to having Saturn in the fourth house. There's been a lot of reconstruction around the notion of home and family and roots and what grounds me and what makes me feel secure and all those things. There may have been a challenge to your health, mental health or physical health, certainly to your work and how that all feels to you. And now with Saturn going in with Neptune into your fifth, it's an opportunity for you to make something real based on what you feel inspired to do. Equally, Mars is in the ninth house of your sense of purpose, giving you an extra boost. It rules this fifth house of your, how you show up and the dynamism that you bring to your everyday experience. And that Aries quality in the fifth house is why Sagittarius is so bubbly. It's the energy that creates this kind of inspired, childlike way of presenting in the world. And so Saturn here with Neptune is an opportunity for you to ground something that you love to do, or ground some way of being that you recognize in yourself, make that real, make it lasting, take responsibility for the creative acts that you bring into the world. That includes children, of course. There may be more responsibility around those different things, especially if you actually do have children and you didn't before, or if you have children who now require more of your time. But it's a healing exercise in and of itself with all of this energy. If you listen to the introduction, you'll hear more about that. But for Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and Rising, this is an opportunity for you to see how much you can give in a way that feels true to yourself. It's really like becoming your authentic self. With that Saturn in Aries with Neptune, it's kind of like saying, you know what, this is really who I am, and I'm feeling good in my skin, and this is how I want to be going forward. Venus is, who rules your work environment, is in the fifth house too, very creatively inspired by a trine that is coming back from Mars in the ninth house of your purpose. So it really looks also like you're going to be able to work towards finding a higher sense of purpose for the work that you do, in a way that is self-expressed. It will, as always with Saturn, it will require time and effort. There's no getting around that. But and Sagittarius, fire signs in general, but especially, Sag is kind of impatient. It wants stuff to be done now and in a big way. And so you will maybe feel frustration, but it doesn't mean you're on the wrong track. So it could be that there's a feeling of delay, or there's a feeling of not quite getting things going in the way that you want, especially initially, because usually certainly the first 10-ish degrees of Saturn going into a sign really are having to learn the hard knocks version of it. Or if you have something in Aries that requires, that has Saturn conjoining it, that might be even more so. But your ruler, Jupiter, is also creating some really supportive, relationships, let's say, or clarifying relationships, or bringing relationships to a place of better support. I know who should be in my life. I understand why they're in my life. I'm not going to waste my time with people who are not sort of in sync with what I believe is important, my values, my vision for life. And that's very supportive, because not only is it your ruler, Jupiter, in your seventh, but also it's squaring the North Node in your fourth house about what you need to feel happy and secure and at ease with your life, or including, who comes with you on this journey to feeling more yourself, more grounded, more secure in the way that you live your life. Um, yeah, Jupiter ruling yourself is always going to be about expansion. And then when Jupiter moves into the eighth house starting in June, while Saturn and Neptune are in the fifth, you might establish a whole new relationship, a love relationship, an intimate relationship, or a relationship based on what you gain from an entrepreneurial enterprise that you're collaborating on, that brings you a real feeling of, wow, this feels good. It feels safe. It feels like something I can really dig my heels in, really make last, make it serious. That's one of the things that Sagittarius tends to resist, is things that are um, too long lasting. So commitment can be difficult for Sagittarius. When Saturn and Neptune come together in the fifth house, commitment to love, commitment to children, commitment to a project is necessary, and that's the only way through. Otherwise, there can be this feeling of just dallying around and not really achieving anything, but you can achieve great things. Saturn also rules your house of money, your possessions, your family, what supports you, as well as the third house of connections to extended family, your local space, your neighbors, your people around you in your everyday life and your communication. And so that also can feel expanded and joyful, where there's a creative impulse that comes in, and whatever this new creative project is will also have an impact on your finances. And again, that would need to see your chart to be able to say how that might impact you. But your creative impulses, and maybe this new business that you start, or this new relation that you're engaging in, is going to make you feel more stable, is ideally moving towards a feeling of financial stability as well. So Yeah, and Uranus, of course, in your sixth with Mercury has been redefining for a long time, but now offering insight into, let's say, your everyday life, what your health is like, whether it's mental health. Uranus with Mercury is more mental health, but it can also be physical, especially as the moon is also there right now. Maybe something about your health overall that is now you're understanding more about it. You now know what to do, what you might need to act upon. And that also will be supported quite a lot when Jupiter goes into Cancer. The feeling of finding more comfort with your psychological self, more support through other people. Just overall, when your ruler is in good dignity, when it's in exaltation, things tend to flow really, really well, even if you can't see it from your ascendant sun or moon, but it's still very advantageous for Sagittarius. Right. I think I've said it all, Sag. So this is a really wonderful creative opportunity for you, and what you create will last. So it's about really recognizing that there are certain benefits to restricting yourself. Sagittarius loves freedom and curiosity to explore, including in relationships. And there are times when you just kind of have to say, you know what, it's time to settle down. It's time to do this thing. It's time to create and be more grounded in something. And certainly with the North Node going through the fourth house ruled by this Jupiter, this is definitely where the universe wants you to put your attention as well. Right, Saj, I'll see you in the next video. Capricorn, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant sign, this Saturn movement into your fourth house with Neptune is going to change quite a lot of your life. Saturn is your ruler, and it's now at the foundation of your chart, and it's going to affect your career, your sense of feeling secure, what you feel you recognize you want to establish, what you need to feel emotionally and psychologically secure, issues around property, home, family, your lineage as well. So issues around your parents, perhaps, also very important. Just like with Cancer, but in reverse. So there's dynamics around home, family, parents, and that dynamic can include yourself, of course, as well. As a parent, I'm now changing, or my home life is changing because I'm a parent, or now I have to look after my parents because they're aging, for example. Um, and of course, it affects your relationship by square. So Saturn is squaring your seventh house of relationships. So there's something that's going on in terms of the readjustment that you need to make, and that you're ready to make, with Saturn feeling like the need to put your attention is there. Saturn being good for you as your ruler. Um, Stabilizing yourself through what is a recognition of your emotional or psychological state in this time, what is necessary in terms of a place to live, or how you need to establish this foundation for your life with reference to work, for example, or even with reference to your um, longevity or your health overall. Mars, your exaltation ruler, is in the eighth house of longevity. Mm. That's in a lovely trine, by the way, to Venus, which is in your fourth. So there may be something in the marriage or partnership dynamic, or in your health, again, mental, psychological, potentially physical as well, where you recognize something needs to change as a way of getting through this more psychological stage of growth, or a need for reestablishing a foundation in your life. Saturn generally going through the fourth is not so easy. It can be very tricky, especially psychologically, but also even in terms of home and what that actually means. How do I find that security that I'm looking for? How do I find that connection to my family? Can be very difficult. But with Neptune, and then with all of these other aspects that are quite healing, the trine from Venus, for example, to Mars, and then the Chiron and Aries, if you're open to healing, if you're open to looking at yourself in this different way, it will ground you and stabilize you for decades to come. So because this is a cycle that you're establishing for the next sort of 29, 30 years, And at the very least, for the next 14 or 15 years, what you establish here as a foundation of your life, Capricorn, is going to be reflected, when the Saturn opposition comes, when Saturn goes into Libra and shows you then the result of this established foundation. So your career will be more stable, your social status will be more stable, the more you give to the stability that you're creating now in this period of time with Saturn going into the fourth. You also have Pluto in your second house after having a very long time with Pluto in your first house of self. Now it's in the house of family and money, resources, your possessions, income, finances, and what's available to you, your money that you save and conserve or invest, for example. This is all being affected by the Pluto transit, which is sextiling now Saturn and Neptune. So it could also be that there's something here about investing money for the long term, or recognizing how you want to increase your income. You've got Uranus in the fifth house of investing and taking risks. It's connecting to children as well. Uranus in the fifth house will have changed your dynamic with your children, or changed the lives of your children, or your sense of wanting children or not, for example. Often with Uranus in the fifth, people are not too bothered about having kids. Like, yeah, maybe not, who cares? And that since really the last 7 years. So lots of bigger changes that can also give you a new impulse around what's available to you to make you happy. So either there's a new dynamic with your kids that brings you happiness, or you've decided actually don't want kids and that makes me happy because now I can do more stuff for myself, or I want to express my creative side and I want to be more artsy, creative, entrepreneurial, risk-taking. And all of this is part of this change. And what do I need to be happy and secure? And once you really understand that, then that helps you to decide how the rest of it takes shape. Also, because Jupiter has been in your sixth house of work, there has been a focus, big focus on work, but also your day-to-day life and health and routines that might support or detract from that. And Jupiter is squaring the North Node in your third house. So your long-term vision is now coming down to basic practical goals with the North Node in the third. It's like more of your attention is coming to what do I need to do now to create what I want in the future. So there's a lot of emphasis on the here and now for Capricorn, a lot of emphasis on stabilizing life, a lot of emphasis on getting really clear, coming from yourself, what's necessary to build that life as you grow then up through the years, as the influence extends out towards others. Already Jupiter will be moving into your seventh house of relationships, super supportive. So from the 9th of June, and once Jupiter moves into your seventh house of relationships, this is going to square back to the Saturn and Neptune in your fourth house. And of course, Jupiter creates an opposition to you. So you get more clear also what is good about relationships or the dynamics in relationships. Generally speaking, for Capricorn, Jupiter does well because that's exalted in the seventh house. So it helps to bring you constructive relationships, benefit through relationships, for example, and it's a good time to develop new bonds or improve the quality of your marriage, which I think seems to have been strained over the last period of time, especially with Mars having gone through for a long time your house of relationship and still in your house of marriage. Not an easy place either necessarily, but that can also help to bring you a sense of more calm and groundedness and comfort in your life. So all in all, a lot of change, but it's often under the surface. So you might find that you're changing enormously, but nobody around you seems to notice. But that's okay, because anyway, as a Capricorn, you tend to keep your cards pretty close to your chest anyway. So all good. All right, Capricorn, make the most of this time, and I'll see you in the next video. Aquarius, you have this ingress of Saturn into Aries in your third house, where it's going to join up with Neptune and bring you a lot of new ideas around what you need to communicate or how you need to say it. The third house is every possible way we connect with other people. So it's communication, it's connecting online, it's connecting through writing, it's learning stuff, it's talking about things, it's language, it's your everyday your coffee house down the road where you sit and have your coffee with chat with the neighbors. It is your neighbors. It's your extended family. It's your siblings. It's basically your everyday life. Think of it that. It's your bus driver. It's everything. So Saturn moving into the third house might have you feel a bit restricted around that or more serious about it. It's like, I'm not going to spend that money every day going to buy myself a latte as I go into work. Or I'm going to start commuting differently. I'm going to walk to work, or I'm going to cycle, or I'm going to upgrade my car. I'm going to downgrade. I'm going to sell my car, whatever the thing is. It's about creating a new vision or participation in your everyday life. Quite constructive when Saturn moves in there, but can also feel sometimes limiting because there can be a restriction around how you connect with people. The people in the third house context can make you more serious. It can make you be like, I'm so done talking about the weather. I just want to talk about what's real now. I want to be real, especially as Pluto is going into your first house, where you are really transforming in a very, very powerful way. And so Saturn with Neptune is actually quite helpful because Neptune in the third house can make communication a little foggy, a little difficult, not too easy to connect with people or not too easy to be clear what you mean and what they mean. Did I hear that right? And so on, where Saturn comes in and it's kind of like, okay, we're grounding this in something more real, but we're talking about elevated things. We're talking about spirit. We're connecting on the level of inspiration or my spiritual beliefs and my faith in things. So it's pulling that sense of my faith, my higher vision for life into my everyday and grounding it into something. So this will make you as an Aquarian, connect when in that more artsy, creative, sort of spiritual way that makes you feel more of yourself. As an Aquarian, that's kind of the way you would like to be, but not always the way you're able to show up. Um, it can offer you also a feeling of clarity around who deserves your time or not. I'm no longer going to waste my time talking to that neighbor who gossips all the time. Maybe realizing whether certain social behaviors that you have allowed or have even actively pursued, where you're realizing, no, I got to stop this now. So you're getting serious. You're getting serious about all these different things, and including what you aim for. The third house is your short-term goals and your willpower, how you use that. Saturn is your ruler, so it's very important for Aquarius what's going on here with Saturn in combination with Neptune in your third. So you're bringing yourself there into your engagement with your everyday life. So there can be a feeling of limitation or restriction. It could be that you're moving far away because Saturn also rules your 12th house of places at a distance, and Venus, which rules your ninth house of faraway people, faraway lands, long distance travel. She's in the third house, and she's trining Mars in your seventh house of relationship, which is also the ruler of your 10th house of career. I hope you're following. Mars rules this third house too of your everyday. So it could be that you're actually finding that you're at a distance from people you want to be connected to, or you're lonely, and you're realizing now there's a different way I need to relate to people. I want to be more connected, but I'm here doing this job, or I'm now living 2 kilometers down the road and I wish I miss my old neighbors, or I'm far away from my family and I feel disconnected, or my family has transformed in some way, for whatever reason, family shifting, changing, um, dynamics, and now I have to reestablish a pattern of connection with my family. I have to make something different work with my siblings or my cousins or my neighbors, or the way I communicate to all those people. There may be a feeling of I don't want to, to communicate with those people. Also, given that Saturn as well can be a bit misanthropic, and so there's a feeling of, you know what, I just feel like I need to be quiet for a little while, and that's also quite healing, and that's also the energy of Chiron and Aries. It's also around healing in terms of the engagement around your maybe early childhood or the extended family, your local space, the people around you, friends and acquaintances and stuff that you hang out with day to day. your day-to-day activity as well. So lots and lots are things happening in the third house. But also it's your opinions about things. And so maybe you're going to start to have a more considered sense of opinion, because one of the things is Aquarians are known for their opinions. That's the archetype. I'm sure you're not like that at all. But the Aquarian opinionated attitude comes from Mars on the third. They say what it's like off the cuff. It's like, yeah, you know what, I think blah, blah, blah. And then it's kind of like, oh, kind of wish I had said that. Or it's very forceful. My ideas, my thoughts are mine and I own them. That's the Aries kind of Aries on the third house. It's very possessive around my thoughts, my opinions, my way of speaking, my output. And so this with Saturn going through there may be now a more calm, reflective way of looking at all of that, especially with Neptune alongside that, a more soft approach to sharing one's ideas and opinions or one's, beliefs or inventions or whatever, and not making that so intense, perhaps as well, which can be also very healing both for you and the listener. Um, yeah, so a really interesting time, very creative, dynamic, also because you've got Neptune uh, Uranus rather, moving into your fifth house, which will trine you. It's where the sun is currently in a trine to Pluto, back to you. So there is something about your fifth house self, the way that you want to express yourself, that's showing up in this new way. And once Uranus moves into that fifth house, it's going to be all systems go. Now I'm different. Now I'm showing up in this new way. Now I manifest love or my projects or my relationship to my children in a completely different, unique way, perhaps less settled, less, um, yeah, it may be more inspired. You've got this inspiration coming from the Mercury Uranus connection in the fourth house of what do I need to feel secure? Where do I want to live? What's my connection to my lineage, my family, my people, my land, etc. Um, and that dynamic is restless when it's in the fourth house, whereas when it moves into the fifth house, where you've had Jupiter also expanding that notion of how to express yourself, you're going to really be able to ground that thing that you're looking at with Saturn and Neptune and express it outwards as you create the new thing, the new vision for yourself. So Jupiter is also in a square to the North Node in your second house. So whatever this is also has some connection to what you need to do in terms of what you need for support or what brings you support through your values, through your income. And Jupiter will move into your sixth house of your work as well. We'll talk about that in another video, but this is on the precipice of that change. So your way of expressing yourself in the most literal sense, like how you communicate, how you use your voice, how you connect with people, is going to be having this domino effect in terms of your everyday life and the way that you reach out into your work, into your everyday work. Saturn rules your 12th house, as I said, the faraway lands and people, but your spiritual life as well. So maybe you're going to be more motivated to talk about your spiritual path or what you consider to be your most important experience of dreams, ancestors, what people don't usually talk about, what makes you feel like you want to share an aspect of your experience that might be through teaching as well or through writing. It'd be a great opportunity if you have a book in you that you want to get out. It's a great chance to do that because you've got this determination to sit down and get the wording right, to get the thing right. May take a couple of trials and errors, and then you finally get the product that you want over the test of time with Saturn going through the third house. Right, so I think that's it. Yeah, Saturn is also, of course, in a very favorable sextile with Neptune back to Pluto, Saturn, Neptune together in a sextile to Pluto. And then even when Saturn moves on, Neptune holds the sextile with Pluto as it has done for nearly a century. So there is something really personal about this as well that's quite favorable. And also because Uranus is moving into a trine from your fifth back to Pluto in your first. and creating also the sextile back to Neptune and Saturn. You're in a really inspirational time, very creative moment in time. So if you've been held back, for example, by, I don't know, financial obligations or other duties, especially as Saturn in the second can have you, having to work hard for money or having to deal with family stuff or whatever, now you might find that you're actually able to open up and use that creative force that you've been chomping at the bit to work with, and also make it last, give it legs. All right, so that's it for you, Aquarius. I'll see you in the next video. Pisces, this conjunction with Saturn and Neptune is in your second house where we find Aries. So there's going to be something here that is affecting you in terms of your sense of self-worth, what your values are, what you value in general, how you earn money, where you find support, what brings you support in terms of the maybe financial or even nutritional ways that you work. That's everything that second house is all the things that support you that can actually be the food that you eat, for example. Um, it can be the money that you have or the things that you receive from others. Mars rules the second house, so it's quite impulsive in terms of money. The typical Piscean is not great with money, actually, for that reason, because that quality of Mars is very impulsive and can be very spendthrift. And so there's a lot of spending without real consideration. Whereas when Saturn goes into the second house, it's kind of like, whoa, 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 slow your roll. Have you got a pension? Have you got savings? Have you got 5 different ways of accessing money now that they can switch it on and off if you're using digital currency or too many card transactions or whatever? And so this is a way of reconsidering all of those things that are centered on value, the store of value, as well as your own value. For Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Rising, your self, this is the Aries part, is your best resource. You are your best resource. You are the one that shows up and finds innovative solutions to everything that you want to create. And that is you doing all of that. You generate income. You generate the feeling of security or not. So your attitude towards yourself dictates whether you feel secure or abundant or not. And that it can also will depend on your natal Mars as well. And Mars at this particular moment, where Saturn is entering in with into its conjunction with Neptune in your second, it's ruled by Mars in your sixth. So you're thinking a lot about money. You're thinking a lot about how your work and your health habits or your lifestyle, your work sort of structure, the hours of work, for example, the amount of work, the volume of work. All of that might be affecting your money and how you feel about yourself. So this is a big opportunity to refine all of that, get serious about that, make it lasting. Think in terms of potentially investing or at least creating a long-term structure so that you're creating a structure for income or a structure for financial, what's the word? Yeah, financial security or financial gain, even because of course Saturn also rules your 11th house of gains. And and also other people, it rules, the friends that you have and the way you connect socially to people. It also rules your 12th house of your spirit, uh, ancestors, faraway lands, faraway places. And here we have this connection with Saturn, Neptune in the second house, connecting you back to all of that. So you could even say that something in the way that you work with money or in the way that you connect to income and sources of income is going to be based on what's good for a broader society or what connects you spiritually to this way of earning money, for example. Or is it at a distance? Is it long distance earnings? For example, like particularly since that's Saturn is ruling the 12th, ruling the 11th house of gains, and especially as Pluto is in there now, you can really find a way to work through unusual ways to make income, like online, working with foreigners, working with people from far away, working with social projects, working with things that are, which is right up your alley anyway. Pisces, that working on the more spiritual side of things, the more esoteric or the more, like dreams, working with 12th house stuff like dreams, as Pluto is in there, or um, people who have passed. If you're working on your skills as a medium, for example, or as a channeler, or as somebody who works in some kind of spiritual healing, this is all really, really helpful. Also, there's this really interesting dynamic where it's moved on now simply because I have moved the clock face of the chart. But at the time that Saturn moved into 0 degrees of Aries, the Aries point, it was Uranus was with Mercury in a very tight conjunction with Mercury in your third house. That's a place of ideas and communication, inspiration around how to talk about things, how to reach out to your community, how to connect with siblings or your extended family, local friends, neighbors, and things like that. Ideas, real inspiration there at the time of this ingress. So again, your inventiveness and your way of expressing all of that is going to help you make money because Venus, which is ruling the third house, is there in the second house of money, talking, inventing, creating, teaching, relaying ideas, writing about stuff. This is part of the story of making money, how you could earn money. And that's part of your everyday because here we have Venus again in the trine from Mars, which is ruling her, ruling all of that stuff in the second house from the everyday. So you really focus on what you need to change in your everyday, in your habits, in your work style, in your work, in the drive, in the way that you support your health or not. Pluto will also reflect that if there's something that you're not doing that brings you some difficulty, you will know by now because Pluto has already been 2 years now in your 12th house. So whatever is addictions or unhealthy patterns, unhealthy ways of living, unhealthy ways of thinking, even the 12th house is the unconscious and recognizing, wait a minute, I had that belief from childhood. Why am I carrying that belief? It's not helpful for me. Or I'm getting that from an ancestral pattern. I don't want this anymore. Real great opportunity for you to heal yourself through all of this as well. And that's also about healing your sense of self-worth and what is a value to you? What is of value to you? What are your values? Very, very big questions at this time. Um, and that will determine your future as well. The notion of values, your value, etc., determines your future because that's Saturn is ruling that 11th house of future, your gains and people that you mingle with and get benefit from the networks that support you, for example. Now, the North Node is in your sign still. And by the way, Saturn, of course, will go back and forth still in your sign in 2025 and 6 again. We'll talk about these things as we go forward in time. But the North Node is still with you till the middle of 2026. And Jupiter, your ruler, is in the fourth house of what makes me feel stable, grounded, secure, emotionally, psychologically, materially. Where do I live? Do I like where I live? Is that changing for me? Are the people I live with changing for me? And this is in a square to that North Node. So your psychological, emotional, and even material grounding is a part of this new way of seeing yourself. Things can move in very dynamic ways now. And as Jupiter moves into the fifth house of your creative self-expression, where it's exalted, by the way, that also is a dynamic around love, romance, and people that you connect with through your creative expression, like children or art, companions in art and creativity, sports and things like that. That's all going to bring you even more benefit. So what you're realizing now, how you see your foundation in life, is it solid? Is it what I need? Am I being helped by, my family, or, am I getting what I need to feel secure? Am I bonding with my family in a healthy way too? This is also part of the greater dynamic of the second house, the fourth house, third house too. Also, is more related to childhood and the extended family and siblings and things like that. But the fourth house is your people. It's your where have I come from and what is the family of my creation or the family I've come from. And how does that make me feel stable or not? So Jupiter is also has been very supportive here in that sense as well, creating a lot of awareness around that stuff and a desire to connect in new ways. And as the sun was here at the time of this ingress, again, listen to the introduction to see that more exactly, that is creating a trine back to Pluto in the 12th. So there's a lot of psychological stuff here in your awareness. Fourth house, eighth house, 12th houses, they're psychological houses. They're our awareness of endings. Fourth house is endings, eighth house is endings with a transformational capacity. And the 12th house is letting go and loss. It's the final chapter of lots of different ways of looking at that. And then, again, that doesn't have to be bad. This is the reality of life. And here we have this emphasis on this as well, where Jupiter is there, the Sun is there. So remember, Mercury was with the in the ingress chart. Mercury was with Uranus in the third. So we're only really thinking about the Sun and Jupiter here. So the Sun trining Pluto in a very favorable way, reconnecting you to your roots, reconnecting you to family, reconnecting you to your spiritual gifts, to the things that you realize, wait, as a child I had this thing and I could do it, and now I realize it has value. It's not stupid, it's not weird, for example. I think that's it, Pisces. You're definitely, the relational quality, of course, is changing because you're changing. And part of what you're changing is your value and your sense of how you create your own sense of groundedness through security and what supports you in life. And this is the story there of Saturn and Neptune for quite some time. So all very, very constructive if you use this thoughtfully and with a lot of future-oriented, careful planning. So good luck, Pisces, and I'll see you in the next video.